What's going on, everybody? Hi, welcome to the program. It is October 8th, 2024. And we are here to do the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's a podcast. It's about video games. It's available online wherever podcasts are available. I mean, you already found it, so I don't know. But maybe I don't know. Maybe you accidentally found it and you need to find it again later. That's the name of the program. If you need to find it again later. No, hi, I'm your host for this week's installment of the program. I'm Jeff Gerstmann. I'm happy to be here. It has been an interesting morning. I had this cough. I got this cough that doesn't go away, if you know what I mean. No, that's just it. Anyway, I would occasionally get what the doctor told me I had inflamed lungs some number of years ago and said, here's an asthma inhaler. It will take care of it right away. And so, in the summertime, end of summer, I would get this cough and I would get an inhaler and I would use it and the cough would go away. I got it again some number of months ago, but also I got, sick and have been coughing and the cough is not going away and all this other stuff. So occasionally I will reach for this inhaler. It's like albuterol. It's like the bone stock ass asthma inhaler that they give people. There's other stuff, but this is the probably, I'm guessing it's the most prescribed asthma inhaler. My asthma doesn't really bother me. It doesn't really get on me ever. I was prescribed, they told me I had asthma back when I was in junior high, and it was awesome because I didn't have to, they told me I had scoliosis too. I don't know, like what the fuck, I don't even know what scoliosis is. They said, your back is weird. I said, oh shit, my back is weird. But I don't know. Anyway, long story short, I got to write a book report on volleyball instead of doing PE in junior high that year. And my dedication to the slothful lifestyle was solidified. Now I get this inhaler from time to time, even though I don't really get, full on like asthma attacks or anything like that. They called it exercise-induced asthma, which again sounds like something you would make up to not have to run. And that's worked out pretty well. But anyway, the upshot of all this is this inhaler is a steroid. And so like once every 20 or so times that I hit this inhaler, that I hit this thing, where is it? It's right here. I guess I have a little, it's a dual chamber. It's a 6-inch, it's like you hit this bad boy. Once every 20-ish times or so, it gives me the jitters, something fierce. Like it's not a racing. My wife was like, oh, is your heart feel like it's going to explode? Like, no, it's not a racing heart thing. It's like every fiber of my being keeps jittering as hard as it can from toe to tip, from my feet to my fingers. It's like a jittery weird mess. And that'll go away in probably another 10 minutes or so. But for right now, holy shit, I've got the jitters, and I don't know, it's fun. I got the jitters. I got my fanny pack here. Someone was asking if I had my fanny pack. I do keep a fanny pack nearby. I did get this Faxicandi fanny pack in the mail not that long ago, and it's pretty sweet. The baby was playing with it the other day because it was down on the floor, and that's I got to get her started on fanny packs, early. Today is her first birthday. She is a 1-year-old today, and for her birthday she caught another cold. She caught her big sister's cold, and so everyone here is going through being sick again. I have not stopped coughing from the last one yet, and I figure in a day or two here I will succumb to some kind of cold-like thing because, we've got 2 snot factories here in the house. And that's just how it's gonna go until these kids are out of school. I don't know what it is, but it's I don't know when. The answer is never. The answer is these kids are going to be bringing home illnesses forever, and just going to have to roll with that, I guess. But yeah, I would not be shocked if I was sick, let's say tomorrow on the timetable. That would be sensible. But yes, the baby is 1 years old, and that's insane. It's insane that it's been a year since she was born. It was such a whirlwind. It was a delivery unlike the other two, but I guess they're all different, right? We went to the hospital like a few different times because it seemed like it was going to be time, and then it wasn't, and then it was, and then, well, whatever. And then when the time finally came, like, boom, she was out of there. She was like, yeah, let me out. I know I've been messing around here for the last week or so, and that's been really funny, but hey. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. My oldest is now in kindergarten. She's 5, and she's bringing home school pictures and illnesses. And one of those is really fun. The other, not so much. Anyway, let's talk about some video games here. I just, hey, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, Warframe did the thing. Warframe did it. Congratulations to Warframe. This was something I think they announced like a day after on this very show. I maybe took them to task for their dumb fucking Steam login system and having to remember and having to go look up my password every time I wanted to play Warframe, which in turn nowadays makes it something that is much harder to play on a Steam Deck because they want you to type in a password every time you launch it. They have now created a way to tie your Steam account to, which they already had a way, but I guess like literally the day after we talked about it, they had a stream, might have been the one from TGS, but I think it was that week, where they were like, hey, with our next update, it's going to, we're going to have an auto login for Steam users. Like, yes, good. And it's manifested in a weird way. Like, it still has the login and password prompt, but now there's a button at the bottom that says auto login with Steam. And I did that like a few days ago, and then last night I launched the game again, and it like asked me a bunch of questions all over again. It was like, hey, wait a minute, you don't have an account tied to your Steam account. Do you want to do that? Like, yeah, what? We did. I thought we took care of this. So I don't know. So hopefully that's the last stuff I'll ever have to click, and now I can just log into the video game and play it, or not. I don't know. Like, I started doing the stuff where you're just like a dude and you go into the Undercroft, and it's this weird, almost run-based thing where you're getting these bonuses on your attacks and stacking those up as you go through a mode. But then a level end, it's a really, I don't know. Warframe is fun, but they've added so much weird shit to it over the years that is just confused. I still don't know what a railjack is. It's fun to say. Railjack. But railjack is like a fucking train that turns into a robot, as far as I'm concerned. But it's also a spaceship, I think. It's a smaller spaceship. I think you have a big spaceship that you live in, and then the railjack is the tiny one you can go out and do dogfights in. I have no idea. I have one, I think. I think I have one. Maybe you have to craft them? I don't ask me anything about fucking Warframe. All I know is now you can fucking log in. So maybe I'll find out about Warframe. Maybe I'll accidentally get way into Warframe now that I don't have to like two-factor and do all, do these 9 different things to log into it every time that I want to play it. That and maybe I'll finally install it on a Steam Deck and sort of see what's up with it. But congratulations to everyone at the Warframe Corporation out there at Digital Extremes when not helping out and making versions of Unreal Tournament. They make this other game called Warframe. Apparently it's been quite popular. I don't know. You get a rail jack. I don't know. It's fun. Rail jack. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back on the other side of that. We'll talk about some Silent Hill 2. They made it again. And then they also made Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi again. And then they made Diablo 4 more. So we'll talk about all of those things and then some on the other side of whatever is happening right here. No one has time for technology that just doesn't work seamlessly, easily. Stuff that just doesn't fit into your everyday life. Fact is, even the things that are supposed to work just seamlessly even don't, That's just frustrating when it comes to stuff that you need to use every single day. You know what doesn't cause that kind of fuss? Raycon's best-selling everyday earbuds. Raycon's everyday earbuds are made to make your everyday just a little bit easier. They just updated them to add new features that make them even easier to use. For example, the everyday earbuds now feature a 32-hour battery life. And you can pair them to 2 devices at once. So, you got a computer or something, on your phone or a video, like you can kind of just get them onto multiple devices at the same time. It's got active noise cancellation. So, you're on a plane or in a loud room full of big, weird computer fans. You can drown that out a little bit. And let me tell you, that's nice. Or, hey, let's say you're, taking care of a baby. Throw one in and leave the other ear open. That way you can, you hear everything that's going on around you loud and clear, but you can still take phone calls. You can still, listen to your favorite podcasts, perhaps. That might be a thing. Hey, check out a podcast. If you haven't heard of these podcast things, I recommend them. And you can use Raycon's everyday earbuds to make that podcast listening even easier. They come in a variety of colors. I got a set of purple ones here. I thought that was a nice look. A nice look. But, it looks, that's cool. But, they're functional. 32 hours of battery life. And you can charge them for 10 minutes and get 90 minutes of battery life out. That's a nice quick charge. It's an ergonomic design. Optimized gel tips for a cozy custom fit. It's got an awareness mode, active noise cancellation, 3 different sound styles. So, you want a little bass boost or something like that. Is there sweat resistance? So if you're running around like a maniac, it's IP66. It's weatherproof, baby. And they got tap functions to, easily kind of, hang up calls and transfer between the different sound modes and noise cancellation, all of that stuff. Very easy to use. And Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee. So if you need to make a return, that's pretty dang easy too. So stop the fuss. Go to buyraycon.com/JeffG today to get 20 to 50% off site-wide. Whoa, that's a wide range. That's right. You'll get up to 50% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/JeffG. Again, buyraycon.com/JeffG. Okay, so our congratulations to the folks at Warframe. They remade Silent Hill 2. They put Silent Hill 2 out again. People seem to really be enjoying the remake of Silent Hill 2. I guess it is officially out today. It's one of those, if you bought the expensive version, then I think you got to play it a couple of days ago or whatever. Silent Hill, look, man, I am not a fan of survival horror video games, generally speaking. I'll put it to you this way, which will only be mostly offensive to Silent Hill fans. I don't really like Resident Evil, so why would you expect me to like the Resident Evil knockoff that came out? Where they were like, what if there was fog? So that the game ran at an acceptable frame rate. That said, I I ended up playing a few hours of the Silent Hill 2 remake, and it has not really changed my feelings on Silent Hill as a series or survival horror as a genre. You spend a good chunk of time walking around, especially the early parts of the game before you kind of get more weapons. You spend a good chunk of time walking around with a big chunk of wood with some nails through it, and you're bashing these vomiting torsos that just kind of like walk around and then skitter around in the fog, and then their torsos open up and they puke weird goo onto you, which is damaging. I would be damaged if a creepy torso thing spit it. But the torso will also like bash you, and that's where I took most of my damage, was the torso, like up close. As you're beating up the torso, sometimes it will get a hit in, but it's like, I don't know, man. It's a big torso with no arms just kind of bumping into you. And then a bunch of red appears on the outline of the screen, and you're like, what damage did this do? It's not like you bit me. It's like if we were fucking slam dancing. Like, he's not even fucking hitting you that hard. It's like the worst mosh pit in the world. This thing going boom, and you're like, what? Okay. Apparently I can take 3 or 4 of those before I'm dead. Like, what kind of James is a bitch is what I'm saying. No, it's and it is that very much like, hey, look at this inventory, and now you've got half of a vinyl record, and the jukebox is broken and it's missing a button, and we need to go find the button, and we need to go find the other half of the record, and we need to glue the record together, and then we need the button, and then we need the coin for the jukebox, and we put it all together, and then here's another fucking dumb contraption 10 minutes later, but it's like, here, put some coins in this thing, and you need to run around forever to find the coins, and now there are enemies that are legs with legs on the top of the legs so that it can walk both ways, and that'll bump into you too. Woo! I don't know, man. Like, what, they're not for me. I guess is the short version of what I'm saying here. Is I just like, nothing about any of that does a single thing for me. But it's good to see that, like, because I feel like the odds were stacked against a Silent Hill 2 remake, right? Like, the very nature, the very idea of like, hey, Konami's going to make a video game, still, I think, elicits feelings of just like, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, whatever, man. They're gonna, and then people were maybe not super on board with Bloober Team working on a remake of Silent Hill 2, but it sounds like that people that are open to these sorts of ideas still, or have an affinity for the genre, are into it. And that's cool. I don't know, like it's cool that this stuff is working for folks, because again, like, it just seems like it seems like it would, especially like, what was that Silent Hill thing they did that was like the live chat thing that people were just spamming emotes and fucking it all, like an interactive, like silent, like the thing that Konami was doing earlier that like people were nonstop clowning on. I don't know. It just feels like Silent Hill has been the butt of a lot of jokes over the years, and so I don't know, but it is funny to see all the fog. It feels very old school. Like, the game feels very old school across the board. I know that, controls were changing and stuff, but something about like, whereas I think like when the new Resident Evil games, and this is it's a different scenario, right? When Resident Evil remakes were happening, like, they feel like pretty dramatic changes. But I think when you go back and look at original Silent Hill 2, and then you look at this, like, it's very, you go like, oh yeah, okay. Like, a lot of the puzzle design and a lot of the style of it and everything feels very on brand for what you think of when you think of that type of game. And the fog is probably not there to keep the frame rate up anymore, but it's hard to not play it and go, ugh, all this fog. Like, it feels like a throwback. Like, I feel like I'm playing a fucking N64 game, with all the fog. Even though it's there for aesthetic reasons, it's still just like, I'm so traumatized by that era of gaming. And as we all know, Silent Hill is a franchise about trauma, and so like all of the fog coming back is very much just like, oh geez. Every game used to look sort of like this. Silent Hill just used it for aesthetic reasons, and good on them. I've been playing it on the PlayStation 5. It does have a toggle for performance mode and quality mode. I played in performance mode. Maybe that adds more fog. I actually don't know. That would be very funny. But yeah, I don't know. It is doing absolutely nothing for me. It's cool that it exists. It's cool that people are digging it. It's cool that they seem to have pulled it off. And I'm sure that's exciting for a good chunk of people, but boy, oh boy, not for me in any way. I was trying to go into it with an open mind because like, people are asking in chat if it has like film grain. So there's a toggle for like visual style if you want like modern, or I think they label it 90s, and it's like a color grading. So maybe it's not quite full on like film grain type stuff, but it does have an option for a somewhat grimier look if that's what you're looking for. So I've like, as much as I don't like this genre in its kind of classic form, like, there have been games along the way that have, I guess, been horror themed, that I have enjoyed, like the Dead Space games, or, even that Dead Space remake I thought was really good. And, like you could put Alan Wake 2, I think, in that category as well, but I think Alan Wake 2 just has so much more going on than just stumble around in the fog and solve puzzles and occasionally fight a thing. Like there's story and style to Alan Wake 2 that I think makes it more appealing to me. Whereas I don't know, everything about Silent Hill, to everything about the way the character speaks, to the way the enemies look, to all the, like, it is all just so fucking corny to me. Like I just like, ugh. God, dude. They can't all be great remakes of video games like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which also came out yesterday. That is another situation where I think it is still a few days away, for people who don't want to buy the expensive version of the game. There's something in this game that I need to research and investigate and see if it is as potentially awesome as it could be, because that might be the one thing about it that I am able to kind of take away from it. So this is the Japanese name. Sparking is what they called this franchise in Japan. Here it was primarily known as, I guess, Budokai. This is like the Budokai, like Tenkaichi games. Which is like a behind the back sort of combat, one-on-one. It has all the meters and trappings of a fighting game without any of the stuff that makes fighting games good. And you can stand in the air and fly around and fly up to people and mash buttons and do all your stuff. But there is like a story creator type thing in here where you can make custom scenarios, and the idea of, and it's got an insane cast because it's got like 30 different versions of Goku, depending on like, it's got the early version from the Z saga, and then it's got a midpoint version, and then a late period version, and then this version. Obviously we all know that Goku goes through a lot over the course of Dragon Ball Z, and he is constantly right. Yes, Tenkaichi is yes. So it's not just baseline Budokai. It specifically is Tenkaichi. We all know that Goku grows over the course of Dragon Ball Z, both in power and ability, and so there are multiple points over the course of that franchise where you go, it's a Goku from this point in the storyline. You're like, oh, okay, that means he can't do this, but he can do this, 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 and this. Similarly, there's a billion different versions of Vegeta in it, and you can play as Yajirobe and it's like all the hit characters from Dragon Ball, and then a bunch of people from later versions of Dragon Ball where I'm just like, I don't know. I still, despite having played Dragon Ball Fighters, I still don't know what a Beerus is, and I don't like looking at Beerus. Looks like a weird cat man. I'm just not I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Beerus. And it's got all the weird like other fusion, like it's like, oh, what if they fused this way instead of this way, or if they were wearing the earrings, then it's this way. If they do it without the earrings, then they fuse this. All of the other stuff. Here's 4 different versions of Trunks, and you're like, yeah, fuck yeah. I don't want to play that game. I don't like I don't like the combat in that game. I don't think it feels good. I don't think it's entertaining. It's another situation where I felt that way when Tenkaichi came out originally. I was like, yeah, this sucks. And I was hoping that maybe after all these years and having gained something of an additional understanding of Dragon Ball Z and an appreciation for the way the fights in Dragon Ball Z often look and the flow that they have, that maybe that would get me there. It does not. But this story creator, if I can write weird stories like that wrestling story mode that the WWE games used to have, you can share them online, and so you can play other people's stories, and all the ones that were there when I was looking at it had a lot of fighting in it. And I don't. So my question is, I don't think you can just write your own dialogue. I think all of the dialogue is like canned, like Dark Souls style sub phrases that you can plop together and plop a character's name in here and plop another character's name in here and kind of build it that way. I don't think it just lets you write your own dialogue, which is unfortunate because that would be much more entertaining. But you can share them with other people, and I imagine that helps them translate it across different languages and all of that sort of stuff. So I don't know. I want to see what the story creator is capable of. It seems like it has some possibilities. But you're not going to. It also doesn't seem like you're just going to create a scene of like Goku getting hit by a car in a parking garage 10 times in a row, which is unfortunate. But that's out now. I don't know. I'm still kind of messing around with it a little bit. Man, okay. So the Diablo IV expansion came out last night. It's called Vessel of Hatred, which sounds like a band that would be like, it's a band that's on the same label as some white power bands, but they're not a white, and they're just like, no, we're not. I mean, we're signed to this label, and then they signed all these. It's not really. We're not. Yeah. Vessel of Hatred is the name of the expansion. It is more story. It is an additional chapter of the story in the Diablo IV story, which is kind of what I was hoping for. Because the stuff they've done with the seasons and the seasonal characters, as I've said before, I won't rehash the whole thing, but that's not how I want to play Diablo 4. I want to take my character and make my character more powerful and more awesome and even more powerful and more Paragon levels and more this and more that for that individual character. I don't want to start a new character from scratch every 3 months. I don't care. I care about my character. I care about what I'm doing with that character and making that character stronger. I don't want to remake that exact character because that's the class I like playing every few months and start over again. So this is a new chapter of the story that you can then take any of your characters, including the one that you used to play through the campaign originally, and go back in and do it and do some more stuff. And it picks up where the base game left off, which, if you don't remember that, what is it? God. They trapped Mephisto inside of a fucking soul stone, and this girl is on a boat with the soul stone trying to bring it somewhere where she can destroy it, and it's talking to her, and she doesn't like that because it's Mephisto. It's a devil man in there, and the devil man is trying to trick her. And that's not, no one, she's not been tricked yet, but she probably will be. And the other thing that happened near the end of the base game of Diablo 4 is like the people from the church hate you. They want you. They think you're a heretic, and they want to burn you, or kill you, or both. And as such, there's some dude who has taken over the church, and he is way more into burning people alive than the old leadership of the church. And so he's like most people affiliated with heaven. He's a bad guy. And he's just trying to purify. He's just trying to keep everything pure by burning alive anything that is not anything completely like him. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm still playing through it. And it is more Diablo. Also, they've made changes to Diablo 4 since its release, and none of those seasonal updates to like, hey, here's how we're handling loot now, or here's how we're, none of that stuff has really done it for me. But having taken a decent little break from it now and coming back to it, the things they've done to streamline some of the inventory might be a little contrived, but are also very welcome. Like, you now have a pet. I have a kitty cat. And the kitty cat collects all the gold and diamonds that are left laying around so that I don't have to. It just means less junk on the ground. Stuff that, you would automatically always want just gets automatically picked up by your handy dandy little pet. It's not like a situation where the pet has separate inventory and you're sending it back to town to sell stuff. I don't think. But it is a way that kind of streamlines some of the management of picking things up off the ground. And they've also kind of redone the leveling a little bit. So they've added more levels and more skill points. So you're able to kind of dump more skill points into your existing character and into your existing build, which gives you a little bit more versatility, which I find doesn't always work in every video game. Here, I would say it is working nicely because it's letting you fill in some gaps in ways that like would have felt broken in the base game. You're like, oh, it'd be crazy if I could have this thing and that thing and that thing. And now you can get a little bit closer to that in some cases. And you're like, okay, yeah, this feels more powerful. This feels like I'm able to kind of take more bonuses that stack with my existing build and make me feel like I'm doing more damage, which is useful because they've also, I think, rescaled. I don't know, like all I saw last night when people got in and started playing it were people complaining, I used to do 1 billion damage and now I'm lucky to do 150,000. It's like, okay, yeah, they clearly have like rescaled and redone a few things along the way. And I'm sure probably now by morning, I'm sure that there are people that are out there doing 1 billion damage all over again, because why wouldn't they be? Feels like more Diablo, and I'm glad for that. It feels like more of the Diablo 4 that I liked and less of the Diablo 4 that I found to be repetitive and unenjoyable. So that's great. That seems like that is something on the right track, and I'm curious to see what they end up doing from here. If they just go right back to like, here's more seasonal stuff, then I will play through this story and probably never touch it again. But if they find good and entertaining, repeatable activities, I could see myself like, I put a whole lot of time into Diablo 3. Let's call it hundreds of hours, maybe 200, not like 1,000 or anything crazy like that. But I played quite a bit of Diablo 3, and I could see myself doing that again here if they make the right tweaks and let you kind of do the thing that I want to be able to do with my characters and all of that. Then I am totally open to the idea of playing another solid chunk of Diablo 4. They had a really crazy launch. They were originally supposed to launch at 4 p.m. Pacific time yesterday, and they got to like a few hours before launch, like 4 or 5 hours, like 3 or whatever it was. And then we're like, hey, we found some stuff and we have to fix it before we can launch this game. We are going to delay the launch a little bit here because we have to fix this before we can put the game out. And so it was this very, like, not even 11th hour, like, just like with a couple hours to go here, they pushed it off, and it ended up launching, let's call it 4 or 5 hours late. I think by the time they got up, it was like 9 or 10 p.m. Pacific time. And so, it's not the end of the world. It was an additional patch that people had to download because they like discovered something that was like, oh, this is broke. Like, I can only imagine what that must have been like to like be so close to launching the thing and then being, oh shit. Hey, like you stop the press. Like we can't, oh God. We have to fucking, there's something just came up. And so it sounds like something came up and then they had to take care of it before they could launch the game. Anyway, it seems like they did that. And the launch, when it finally did come out, it seemed very smooth. It seemed like it happened, so I don't know, like a temporary little blip here. Of course, there was something, whatever. I was looking at the Blizzard forums because that's where they were posting their updates as to when it was going up. And at the bottom of a thread on the Blizzard forums, they will show you links to similar threads or something. And so it was threads of other people talking about the delay. And it was just one guy. And, there's always going to be at least one guy. But it was just like some guy's like, I took the day off work to play this game. And it is now 3 hours later, and I am still getting this bug. Blizzard must compensate us. Like, no, what? I just, look, there's something I'm going, the plight of the consumer is a very real thing. I think that there are plenty of situations where companies take advantage of consumers or do things where they like, hey, they did an early launch and then the game was broken through most of the early launch time. So people that paid money specifically to be able to play at that time were fucked and did not get the thing that they paid for. Like there's very real like consumer issues around the launching of video games. This is not one of them. If you take a day off work and then a launch doesn't go smoothly or whatever, that's on you. Don't take a day off work for a video game coming out. I don't care how many marketing campaigns are like, well, we made a handy dandy little checkbox note that you can give to your boss or girlfriend because you need the day off to play Halo. Like, no, fucking shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. If you take the day off to play a video game and the video game doesn't work right, that ultimately, again, while I agree, video games should launch smoother and video games should stop launching broken, and there's very real issues on that sort of stuff. If after all this time you say, I'm taking the day off so that I can play this video game, you fucked up. Don't do it. Like what? Just play it when you can. And then, maybe take the Monday after the weekend off or something. If you really, yeah. Don't take launch day off for online video games. It's bound to go bad on you. But anyway, I don't know. There's a new class in here too. I didn't try it because I will probably try it at some point, but I wanted to kind of pick up where I left off with my character and kind of stick with that. So I have not tried the new class yet, but I don't know. Maybe I will. Like I said, with the base classes in the game, Barbarian was the only one that I found enjoyable. I tried them all. And I like being a barbarian. I like spinning around and breaking shit. It's fun. Hey, speaking of breaking shit, that was another thing that kind of stuck out at me about Silent Hill 2. This guy, James, This fucking guy, James, with his fucking hair. Silent Hill 2 is a very limited environment in terms of how you can interact with it. In one way, it does some stuff that I was super into, because you can break like every single car window in the game, at least the side windows, not always the windshield or whatever, but you could break a lot of windows in the buildings. You could break, so you're just walking around with this big wooden fucking, and you're just like just breaking out windows, and that made me feel good, and I had a really great time breaking windows in Silent Hill 2. However, this is a game where it feels like just about anything that is on the screen is locked in place. There is not a lot of dynamic destruction. There is not a lot of dynamic anything. If you see an alleyway that is blocked off because there are 3 milk crates in the way, or some cones and some tape, you can't fucking go that way. Like, sure, there's enough space to where James could really just walk right through and keep moving, but he will not. Will he step over these milk crates to get from one side? He will not, sir. And in that way, like, for as much as it's a nice looking, remake of a game, and it does look nice and modern in a lot of ways, that's very much something where like it feels like an incredibly old video game. So that is something where it gives itself away as like, yo dog, this is a remake of a game back from an era when that was not a fucking thing. And that's all still there. I almost would have rather seen them make those barricades, make those blocks look like legit things that he could not surmount. Like, oh, I can't get over that. Like, no, dude, you could step here and step here. Like, there's room for your foot between these 2 milk crates. You could just keep going. No, he will not. Like, okay, you're walking around breaking all of these windows with your wood, but like this wooden gate that is low enough for you to climb, but also it seems loose enough that if you just took your fucking thing and bashed it a few times, you could bash the lock on it and open it. He will not, sir. And so there's just like a few little things like that. I mean, whatever. That's all video games. You find that line, right? Of like, hey, here's the part where they said, fuck you, you can't go here because it's a video game. But this feels like, the line where it was back in the 90s. And that's either going to be cool for you or it's going to drive you extra insane. But yeah, anyway, why don't we get into the news? Microsoft has detailed a new effort from the Xbox research division. And they've kind of laid out a handful of things they're looking for. They want to talk to game developers specifically. There is a big long blog post on their developer. This isn't like a public facing necessarily, like it's not the Xbox Wire specifically. It's like they have a developer portal, and this is written by one Miguel Lopez, who I believe is the mayor of Hialeah. I think he's the current manager of the Pac Jam Teen Disco. But he's also a Microsoft game dev contributing editor. But it goes on to kind of say like, hey, this division is traditionally focused on like player experiences, and they're researching how players play games. And that the Xbox research division has expanded to also now want to talk to developers. And the stated objective here is and I'm quoting here from the piece, listen to developer partners in the Xbox ecosystem and partner with product teams to bring forward insights and data that could help improve future tools and services. And so it's about, basically helping to build a better ecosystem. That includes like, hey, if you are using Xbox's tools and the tools are bad, they want to hear about it so that they can fix it. They want to work more closely with developers to try to to get better at all of that sort of stuff. There's some quotes here from this person's last name is all over this, but Deborah Henderson, who's the principal user researcher for Xbox. They've got a lot of quotes from her throughout it. We want to hear from everyone who works on games or helps support game studios, because if we can make your life easier, it makes gaming better. We make a lot of tools, not just the GDK, and it's important we hear from folks like artists using Pix, which is a performance tuning and debugging utility for DirectX, or release managers or PMs uploading stuff to our store. Your entire studio can sign up if you want, and basically they're hoping to get some more developers into their system here so that they can, poke at them and ask them questions to kind of help make this stuff better. On the sign up form, one of the questions is, I'm not planning to release my game on Xbox. May I still participate? And the answer is, that's A-okay, and we'd still love to have you. We'd love to learn about your experiences, even if you have no plans to release on Xbox. And so, like, they're kind of just looking for a wide swath of developers to talk to them. And this kind of, I think this kind of dovetails in with some of the information that was coming out of Tokyo Game Show, where you saw, Sarah Bond and Phil Spencer kind of making the rounds. And of course, having meetings with developers who don't ship games on Xbox, because they're going to talk to everybody they can. And, you could argue that talking to people who are not currently working with them is time better spent than talking with people that they're already partnered up with pretty well. And so they're out there trying to figure out, like, hey, what can we do to, you want to ship on Xbox? Like, what can we do to pave the way to make that easier? I think all of this seems really smart on their end. Because they, there are still so many cases where the games are not, where games are not launching simultaneously on Xbox, especially a lot of indie developers. You do see a ton of games, and that's not, that's just you only have enough time in the day to put a game out in the first place. You might put your PC version out first and then do console later. But like I every week it feels like that there are probably 5 to 10 games that come out on Xbox, because there are a lot of games coming out on Xbox every single week. Like I get a list from them about, like, here's the ID at Xbox, like here's kind of everything that shipped, and it's a long list every single week. The thing you don't always realize unless you start loading up Steam alongside that list is you go like, oh, this game is like 10 months old. This game came to Steam forever ago. This came to this platform ages ago. And so Xbox is not always getting things in a timely fashion. Some of that, I think is unavoidable because developers don't have enough people to make 3 versions of a game at the same time. And so they're going to do what they're going to do. But also I think it makes sense on the Xbox side to kind of like, to ask the questions. Go, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you shipping your games on our system? Or why are you shipping them much later? Or what's the problem? What's the holdup? What are the problems with making this happen? What are there things we can do to make it faster? They underwent, I think, a similar kind of process on the I know this because I think I may have accidentally caused part of it, but there was a while there that they were digging into, like, hey, it sure does seem like everyone is covering the PlayStation 4 version of a game and not necessarily writing about the Xbox One version of a game. What's going on? And I've talked about the kind of snowball effect that, hey, if a company, if a platform has a bigger install base and all of this other stuff, that kind of dovetails into, well, you're probably better off making sure that you're covering that version of a game, because more of your audience is going to get use out of a specific coverage of that version of the game, and blah, 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 and how that's just kind of a business thing. Whereas I think a lot of users, especially people who bought the platform that is not the dominant platform, they then take it as like, there's a bias out there. And this, like, no, dude, It's not a company bias. It's a bias in favor of more of the audience has this system. And so it's better for us to, we reach more people when we cover this version of the game. And so I think Microsoft went down a bit of a rabbit hole trying to figure out like, hey, are people asking for Xbox versions of games when they get reviewed? Are you sending out Xbox versions of games? Because, or pushing back on, because I've definitely had publishers tell me like, oh, we don't, at the time, I think the thing I ended up saying that may have triggered a little bit of this is I've definitely had situations back then where people were like, oh, we don't have any Xbox codes, but I've got PC and PlayStation codes. And so it was like a similar internal kind of like, hey, why are they saying they don't have Xbox codes? We have a tool that they can use to generate like 1,000 codes. Like, is that not enough? What do we need to do? Is there something we can do? And so it kind of led to them, I think, investigating some of those situations to kind of better understand why that happens. This reminds me of that a little bit where, hey, they're going to try to talk to developers and figure out, is there anything they could be doing better to kind of make all of that stuff smoother? I'll tell this story. Zoo banned me stepped on otter in the chat. Says, I'm curious to see if any money went to make sure people reviewed Metaphor on a Series X and not PS5 or even PC. So I will tell you. They asked me, hey, which version of Metaphor do you want? And I said, oh, PC, I guess. I don't know. They responded and said, sure. By the way, they said, here's a bonus Xbox code in case you need it. Just in case you want to check it out on Xbox. And when I was reading that email, I realized like, oh, right, this is like a Game Pass game or something, right? This is like Xbox is marketing this one. I guess it makes sense that they would do that. Some games back in the day, it's not like this anymore. It used to be a situation where like if a company was doing a marketing deal with a game, it became actually somewhat difficult to get certain versions of a game. I think about Call of Duty review events with this stuff because they would lead on Xbox 360. When you would go to the review event, it was Xboxes all over the place. But then off in the corner, there would be like 2 PlayStation 3s set up. And if you wanted to go touch that version of the game, it was there. And I bet there were people who worked for like PlayStation specific outlets that were like, no, I need to play all of it on PlayStation. And I'm sure that they accommodated those people specifically. But yeah. Anyway, is Metaphor? Sorry, someone says I read this morning that Metaphor was a Game Pass game. Is it actually not? Is it just like they did a marketing deal for Xbox, but it's not okay. So it's not okay. Sorry, I looked that up. It is not currently on Game Pass. But they did do some kind of something with the Xbox version of that game, I believe. Okay. Anyway, that game seems cool. I have not had much time to spend with it just yet. Anyway, this Xbox research thing seems like a good thing that they should be doing, especially again in the wake of like hearing developers complain about the Xbox Series S and all of this other stuff. It makes sense for them to kind of find additional ways to work with developers to make sure that they are being good partners and getting out there with what developers need. The developers at 343 needed a name change, apparently, and so they have done it. This was announced over the weekend. I guess this was in conjunction with some esports thing. I was like, why are they rolling this out on a Sunday? Do they not want people to know? I'm like, oh, okay, esports. Halo is moving to the Unreal Engine in what is one of the worst kept secrets in video games. They are going to start making Halo games on the Unreal Engine. They had an engine test. Basically, they embarked on a big internal project to kind of get used to the Unreal Engine and start putting those assets into the Unreal Engine and get a sense of like what it's going to take to do it. And so they went on this big project. And so they put a trailer out showing kind of the results of that project. It's not a game. It's them taking some assets and making some new assets and just getting up to speed with the engine and seeing what it all looks like. And so they do have something up and running in Unreal Engine 5. But it's not necessarily like this is the next, like there was no game announcement in conjunction with this announcement. It was more like, hey, yeah, we're going to make more Halo stuff. And also we're going to make it in Unreal Engine now, which I think is a really smart thing for them. It makes a ton of sense. I remember I was getting emails from people like off the record, before Halo Infinite came out, like multiple emails from different people that were like, yeah, this engine that we're using is like, it's still like the Halo Reach engine in some ways. It's got this and that. And like, the words tech debt being thrown around a lot in terms of like all of the things they were going to have to do to get this old ass engine to make a new ass game. And what a heavy lift that was, moving to a new platform, we're doing this and that, like all of the stuff involved in getting that engine up to speed. At the end of the day, like, how much does that matter? Like, whatever. What matters about it is that it's a proprietary engine that they have to update and maintain themselves. And so they have to have staff devoted to maintaining this bespoke thing. When you move to Unreal Engine, you end up in a situation where someone else is maintaining the engine. You might be making your own changes to the engine that fit your project and whatever else. A lot of developers don't use the bone stock Unreal Engine. They're bolting their own stuff onto it. Famously, NetherRealm was, a studio that was finding ways to get 60 frames per second out of the Unreal Engine at a time when that seemed crazy. Back on the PS3 and 360, and so they were thought of as wizards in the space for that specific reason. It's just an example of like, hey, sometimes you got to bolt things onto that engine to make it do what you want to do, even though it is theoretically not your engine. The other knock-on effect is that it's going to be much easier to hire and integrate people if they're already familiar with Unreal Engine and the way that you kind of build your things in Unreal Engine and the tools you use to do so, as opposed to like someone's got to start and then figure out like, okay, how do I do this in the Slip Space engine? What do we do? Like they've got to go through some kind of boot camp just to learn the tools in the engine and all this other stuff. So this probably helps them with hiring. This probably makes it easier for them to bring people in, because skill sets may transfer a little bit more directly in some cases. And so that's probably a good thing overall. It's like, it's one of those things that like, who cares? At the end of the day, who gives a shit what engine a game is made on, as long as the game is good. And I actually think that about Halo Infinite, where like, yeah, I was hearing complaints from people years before that game shipped. But by the time that game shipped, it didn't look like it was a product of a bad engine or like, oh man, we wasted, it looked fine. It was a good looking game. It ran pretty well. Like I'm sure that they had a lot of trials and tribulations getting it there. And obviously the game had a long road ahead of it at launch where it needed to be polished up and fixed and all of that sort of stuff. Whereas moving over to Unreal Engine, probably it's a different set of problems, right? It's a set of problems that you can probably hire up for more easily, and that's probably a good thing. The other thing they did is they changed their name. I guess the other benefit is like, hey, you already have other Unreal Engine games in the family. You've got the Coalition focused on the next Gears game, E-Day. I heard some stuff about E-Day relatively recently that sounds okay. I don't know. I think it's not a big enough bit of information to bother with, but it sounds like that is coming along, I guess I would say. And so you've already got another studio working on Unreal Engine games, and so there's some shared learnings there that you can help each other out with and whatever. We talked about a lot of this last week. believe it was last week, ahead of this announcement, which is weird, but here we go. The other thing they did, so there's quotes here, videogameschronicle.com pulled some quotes out of the information. And this is from Pierre Hintz, who's the head of the studio. He says, "We believe that the consumption habits of gamers have changed. The expectations of how fast their content is available. On Halo Infinite, we were developing a tech stack that was supposed to set us up for the future and games at the same time." And then the art director, Chris Matthews, is quoted as saying, "Hey, respectfully, some components of Slipspace are almost 25 years old. Although 343 were developing it continuously, there are aspects of Unreal that Epic has been developing for some time, which are unavailable to us in Slipspace and would have taken huge amounts of time and resources to try and replicate. One of the primary things we're interested in is growing and expanding our world so that players have more to interact with and more to experience. Nanite and Lumen, which are the rendering and lighting components of Unreal Engine, offer us an opportunity to do that in a way that the industry hasn't seen before. As artists, it's incredibly exciting to do that work." So, hey. Yeah, they should probably do that. That seems like it makes a lot of sense. The other thing they did is they renamed the studio from 343 Industries to Halo Studios. They have a new logo that says Halo on it. It's not just the old Halo logo. It's like a new thing. And it's not, I don't know. It's whatever. I'm not a, there were people that thought that the logo sucked. I'm not that invested in it one way or the other. I look at it and go like, all right. It's not the most amazing logo in the world. It's fine. It's fine. And also they pitched the studio as growing. They pitched the studio as, hey, yes, we're starting to feel some momentum with some of these engine changes, and we're kind of heading in a direction now, and that we are growing the studio and we're making progress and moving forward. I think that them changing the name of it makes sense. A lot of people have left that studio. And so like you end up with this, like this ship of thesis sort of thing of like, is it still the same 343? They don't think it is, and they want to rebrand because I think, the 343 the name has been beaten up quite a bit over the years. Some fairly, some unfairly. I don't necessarily like people are always like, it's still 343 and they're changing the name to cover it up, and like, I don't know, man. Like that's studios change, right? Whether it gets bought or absorbed or just natural attrition and people leave to go do other things, whether it's because the old games did not do well or because they want a different challenge, or you end up in situations where a lot of other people leave. And so at some point it is kind of a different studio, right? And so with the amount of kind of high profile turnover, they've had people come and go now over these last handful of years. I think it's also like one of those team morale things. Like you have to think about that stuff. It's like this intangible, right? But them being able to get out from under this thing that never really felt like, I'm sure to some of the people there, never really felt like it was them because they're recent hires or recently joined the team. They're like, hey, it really sucks that we have to deal with all this. Like that all of this gets laid at our feet. Like we're just trying to fucking make a thing, And so there's a morale component there to where they feel like it helps kind of align them all and like, hey, we're making a fresh start. We're changing the engine. We're trying to change a lot of, and they say as much in the video that they're trying to change the way that they make Halo games. Like, here's a new recipe for how we make Halo going forward. And so, hey, we're going to also change the name of the studio because I think that helps give the people there a fresh start. It helps, again, and that can help with morale and kind of help people feel like, hey, they're a part of something vital and fresh and new. We're moving forward. We're moving forward. And so there's value to that. I don't think it's not like they're not trying to sweep 343 under the rug because like, who are they fooling? It's not like they're trying to hide it and be like, we've got a brand new studio working on the Halo game. Like, no, they would, like if you wanted to lie about it, there's like a billion different ways you could do it. But at this point, they have had, at least at the senior level, a lot of turnover. I'd be curious to know like what the percentages are in terms of like people who have been there for, 10 years or more or whatever, and how many people are kind of newer to the studio. Either way, I think it's a team that probably deserves a fresh start. And I'm very curious to see what they do next. Because what do you do with Halo? If you're sitting here in 2024 and going, all right, here we go. Halo, what the fuck is that? That's a really hard question to answer, I think. In terms of, hey, okay, we want to make a vital feeling thing that is fresh and new and modern. And we also have this big fan base of people that have these very specific requirements of what Halo means to them. And if you miss even one of them, they're gonna. And so, what do you do? Can you meet all of those expectations, or do you push a reset button and say like, "Hey, man, the Master Chief Collection is right fucking there. We've got a Halo for you. It's called the Master Chief Collection." And try to move forward and figure out that formula all over again. I hope that they move closer to the latter of like, I want them to take big swings. I want them to take big risks again, and it's easy for me to say as someone who was never the biggest Halo fan in the world, but that chunk of time in the middle there, the late era of Bungie's late period with the franchise, I think are some amazing video games. 3, Reach, ODST, that's some killer shit that they did right there. From a storytelling perspective, from a, just the flow of those games, the story, like they made fantastic video games right there. Before that, not so much. But, and after that, the 343 stuff, I was hoping for a greater change. I think was the big thing for me was like, okay, you finished the fight. Halo 3 came out and you finished the fight. You marketed that entire game on finishing the fight. And now you're making a game called Halo 4. I wanted that game to be, like I've said it before, but like a dramatic change in terms of who you're fighting, what you're fighting, all the other stuff. And over the course of like Halo 4 and then 5, it felt like that they took a stab at it. They're like, these Promethean, we got a new faction here. And then they were like, okay, we're going to integrate this into the old faction because people miss the elites, it turns out. So I don't think you could reboot it. You could, but man, you're already in the process of rebooting Gears to a certain extent, or doing your prequel kind of throwback thing. Maybe that doesn't qualify as a full reboot per se, but I think Halo is due for a reinvention, and especially in a world where the same company now owns Call of Duty, right? Because your first person shooter, your kind of traditional competitive first person shooter needs are kind of, your portfolio is solid on that front. And so if anything, I think that even though the fan base for Halo and the fan base for Call of Duty were not always the same thing, I think that gives the Halo team a little bit of additional cover to be like, hey man, figure it out. Figure out a new, the game would need to have some kind of competitive component to it. I don't think you can get away from that completely. But you don't need to, Halo kind of pushed in this direction, right? Where you got to the end of Halo 3 or, that era of Halo. And the game, I think, started to feel slow in comparison to a lot of the other shooters on the market, as Call of Duty was very ascendant in that period, the mid 2000s, 2007 and on. Like the expectations for what a first person shooter was on a competitive level started to change dramatically. It was no like, and Halo was this very floaty, slow, deliberately paced, some might call it, charitably, I guess. And so you saw as 343 kind of took the reins and started to figure out like what is competitive Halo in this day and age, they started to speed it up. They started to like, okay, we're going to bring running, you know, it's like, oh, this is just an armor ability and you're going to do this thing. And, you know, like we're doing these little speed things, but like over time, now Halo Infinite is just full on some straight up left trigger, right trigger business if you want that, you know, and it's not quite the same way that Call of Duty does its aim and shoot type stuff, but it's definitely hedging in that direction. But if you own Call of Duty, you don't need to chase Call of Duty. You know? You need to figure out what players want in a world where, you know, you are already giving them the most popular competitive multiplayer shooter on the market. And so again, I think that would give the Halo team a little bit of cover to really reinvent itself and figure out what it needs to be. I don't think that's going back to the pace of Halo 3 and Halo 2 and that era of competitive multiplayer. But, you know, maybe they go and make a weird third-person game. Maybe they just do something insane and completely different. Like, the world needs that, right? Like, put aside your expectations of what Halo is and just think about just in more kind of, I don't know, ruthless terms. Like, you're not married to what Halo is anymore. No one is, you know, it's not that it's bottomed out. Halo is still popular. They still do this, but like you've had a good run with the style of Halo that you were making in the first trilogy. You changed it up and found some different type of multiplayer that you made, and Halo Infinite, I feel like, is in a decent place or whatever. Now what? I think that now what has an opportunity to be something totally different, or like at least like, what are some different modes we can do? What are some different types of shooting? You know, like what, some different models, some different, you know, the pace of combat, the number of players, the all of these things. I think you have an opportunity to do something bigger with. But man, I don't have an answer to that question. So yeah, I don't know. I would love to see what they, I'm going to be very fascinated to see what they end up doing. And I hope that they don't, you know, not like a blank check or anything like that, but I hope that they're able to really kind of approach some of the aspects of Halo with a clean slate and figure it out. Because I think if they just go and make like a very classical Halo game and they're like, here it is, it's a game like the Halos you used to like, there's a finite number of people that give a shit. And that number is smaller than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, you know, not to say that Halo is small, but it just feels like there's an opportunity to reach more people with something more exciting, new, and fresh. But I don't know. I'm the guy over here thinking that that PlayStation is dumb for not making a new Killzone game. So what the fuck do I know about anything? But yeah, you've got an opportunity to generate what Halo is for a new generation of players that simply do not have the affinity or the interest in what Halo was. And in some ways some people might seem like that might seem depressing to some folks, but that to me seems freeing. In addition to changing the name of the studio and doing all this other stuff, like, yeah, man. Figure it out. Figure it out. Sega has figured out what to do with Creative Assembly on the I guess not quite on the heels of the cancellation of Hyenas. But Creative Assembly has announced that they have a new game in the works, and it is a sequel to Alien Isolation. They announced this basically in conjunction with the 10th anniversary of Alien Isolation, that they're going to go back and make another one. This this is probably the right move. Man, talk about studios that, are maybe not the same as they used to be, because like post Hyenas, I think they did go through quite a bit of layoffs and turnover and whatever. But creative director Al Hope, who directed the first game, claims that the sequel is in early development at Creative Assembly. This is according to something they put out on social media, as distilled by videogames.chronicle.com. On the 10th anniversary, it seems only fitting to let you know that we have heard your distress calls loud and clear. And yeah, no big details on this other than, hey, we're going to make another one of those, and that's cool. They should. Apparently, I don't get to see the message on Twitter. So since I switched computers, I just have decided not to log into my Twitter account on this machine, and it's interesting how much they won't let you look at if you're not logged in anymore. So some of these links are just dead, and like, that's fine. Thanks to Video Games Chronicle for keeping me off Twitter. Yeah, Alien Isolation, it's crazy to think that game is 10 years old. That's scary. That's terrifying. It's cool that they are making another one of those. And I'm excited to see what they end up coming up with. And it's nice to see the Creative Assembly name on something that you look at and go like, yes, yeah. Because Hyenas was not it. Ubisoft. We talked a bunch about them last week. There's some talks going around that Ubisoft has kind of acknowledged in a way that, like, I don't think necessarily acknowledges it. But anyway, the Bloomberg reported that that Tencent, which already owns a portion of Ubisoft, had been in discussions with the other owners of Ubisoft, specifically the Guillemot brothers, and also kind of like figuring out, like, talking to advisors and all this other stuff to figure out how the hell they're going to stabilize the stock price and figure out, what's the way forward for Ubisoft. There was a report. This report out of Bloomberg did say that one of the things they were considering was taking the company private. Which kind of is in the wake of, I think, a relatively small investor in the company making a lot of noise saying, hey, you need to take the company private. What the fuck is going on over there? And, that kind of stirred up a bunch of talk around their earnings call. Of people saying, yeah, what the hell is going on over there? And they're giving a non-answer of like, but also, let's see here. The report is that the talks were in early stage, but that there was a possibility that Tencent and Ubisoft could team up to take the company private. This is according to VideoGamesChronicle.com. And basically, the only statement that the company is giving is that it regularly reviews all its strategic options. They heard from a spokesperson who said, Ubisoft has noted recent press speculation regarding potential interests around the company. It regularly reviews all its strategic options in the interest of stakeholders and will inform the market if and when appropriate. The company reiterates that management is currently focused on executing its strategy centered on two core verticals: open world adventures and gas native experiences. Gas. It's fun to say gas. It's fun to talk about games as a service because you get to say gas. Give them the gas, like you're shutting down a something awful thread. So that's kind of a non-answer. That is them, because they're on the heels of the speculation around the company going private. In this Bloomberg report, the stock price shot up from people going like, oh shit, I better get in on this if they're going to take it private because there's money to be made, and all this other bullshit. And so as a result of the stock price being all over the place, they have to have a response. And so, but their response is like, we're always looking at stuff, which is, of course they are. They're always looking at all their options all the time. Every company is. You would be foolish to assume that they were not, at least even, you know, if someone shows up and says, hey, we're interested in buying you, and they look like they might be able to put together something resembling a serious offer, you have the conversation. You don't go, pish posh, get away from me. We're making Just Dance over here. You couldn't possibly understand. You know, no, you figure it out. You figure out where things stand, and you're probably doing that all the time. And so their statement is really not anything of note, other than to say, yeah, we regularly review all our strategic options. We're always acting in the interest of our stakeholders. And so they're doing that. We'll see if anything happens there. Like like we were saying last week, Ubisoft just feels adrift maybe isn't the word, but like they just feel lost. You know, they're two core verticals: open world adventures and gas games. Like I said last week, I think that they kind of hit a wall in terms of people being interested in the type of open world adventure that they tend to make. I think that people are very cool on that right now, or cooler. Not to say those games would sell zero, but you know, they're not the guaranteed slam dunk hits that they used to be. And their service game stuff that they've had, Ubisoft, you know, other than Siege and I guess For Honor, which is, you know, still around and still getting updated. Good on them. You know, they have not really been able to crack that nut. Even Siege, I wonder how well Siege does for them. It probably does great, but like, I don't know. People's interest in Siege, it feels like the people who play Siege are off to the side playing it, and you never hear about it. Whereas some of these kind of larger service games, you hear about all the time because like, oh, in this season they're doing this, and it's such a big deal that it still permeates the mainstream kind of gaming news. Whereas Siege, what's happening in Siege? I don't know. I see a lot of clips of a guy who he blinks a lot. He's this dude who, I don't know if he's a Siege coach or what the deal is, but it seems like his whole thing is people send him clips of them playing Rainbow Six Siege, and then he watches the clips and gets mad about how they play it. And he says, "Why aren't we droning?" And then he kicks his microphone, and he's like, and you're just like, okay, cool. Like, that dude seems like he's an okay guy. He seems like my kind of piece of shit, if that makes any sense. It was just like, yeah, I don't know, this guy, but also the dude is so wired into Siege, and it's cool to see. He's very good at explaining. He will pause the clips and say like, and he does it in a streamer kind of over the top sort of way, but he'll say, hey, did you hear that? And like, hey, I heard footsteps on carpet. That means there's one guy at the top of the stairs. If you go around this corner up here, there's gonna be a guy right there for you to shoot. And then down here, and then sure enough, if the guy playing is any good, when he unpauses the clip, the guy goes and he heard it too, and he goes and looks up the stairs and fucking smokes a guy, and you go, huh. And it's interesting to see a game wired that way, like players that are so fucking wired on a game that every single footstep they hear, they know, okay. Or they see people like one of the other things, like, you know, you'll blow a hole in the floor and then drop down through it. And then sometimes good players in some situations will shoot their gun as they're falling because that will mask the sound of the footsteps to prevent people from figuring out what they have done. Because Siege is all about like, okay, it's this 5v5 thing of like, you know, you're hiding and trying to get around these areas, and seeing those sorts of things that you would never really think about unless you were an extremely high level Rainbow Six Siege player. It's really fascinating to watch this guy break these clips down, because the maps are very small, and the characters are very specific with the loadouts and weapons that they should be using. You know, he gets angry when people are taking the wrong gun into a fight, or, you know, not using their drones, or not breaking through a barricade the fastest way possible, and all this other stuff. So he's a character. He's what the fuck is his, Jinxie is his name. Interesting dude. Interesting to watch the clips anyway. And now my TikTok is just covered of clips of that dude watching other dudes play Rainbow Six Siege. But like that's if it wasn't for that, like I you know, and that's a relatively recent thing that I've started seeing on TikTok. But like that was the first I heard about anyone talking about Rainbow Six Siege in, you know, probably a couple of years, really. It just kind of became this game that was like, it was quietly large, and you just kind of assume it's off there doing its thing and probably doing well enough, even if people are mad about certain aspects of it, because any game that's made it this many years, people are just gonna be mad all the time. That's just how video games work. But yeah, at least Ubisoft has that. If they didn't have that, I mean, what would they even have? You know, they'd be excited about the next Assassin's Creed release, and they'd have a Star Wars game that apparently they are completely unhappy with, and not much else. Hey, speaking of Diablo 4, I forgot to bring this up back then, but Rod Ferguson, who is running Diablo these days, claimed, said on twitter.com that Diablo 4 will be getting updated with PlayStation 5 Pro support. Which, yeah, it's a modern game. Of course it would be. Then you think about it, you're like, oh, here's an interesting moment of like, here's a Microsoft studio that is going to, you know, go above and beyond to support the upcoming launch of the PlayStation 5 Pro, which of course they would. But it's just an interesting thing to think about. You're like, oh yeah, I guess it makes sense that they're doing this. Like, it's not like a big controversial, like, oh my God, but it will result, like the end result of this will probably be that will be the best console version of the game. It will probably look and run better than the Xbox Series X version to some degree. And, I don't know, someone will probably be mad about that at some point, but, yeah, he just says more details at a later date, but that Diablo is indeed on the list of games that will be updated to support the PlayStation 5 Pro. Rockstar finally announced the PC version of Red Dead Redemption. That happened, I guess, overnight. I woke up to that in my inbox. The game will launch October 29th, and it will be available on Steam, the Epic Game Store, as well as the Rockstar Store. If you're jonesing for, you're a big Rockstar Store fan. Double 11 is working on this, which I believe Double 11 did. I feel like this is not the first game that Double 11 has ported to PC for Rockstar. I feel like I've heard their name. Anyway, as the release says, they're gonna, you know, hey, it'll run in 4K. It'll go up to 144 hertz, which seems low to me, to be honest. I mean, why are we like, yeah, you're gonna do ultra wide monitor support, but this monitor does 360 hertz. So I don't know what this 144 hertz bullshit is. Are you trying to like kill my eyes with these low frame rates? Like, what is the problem here? What are we even doing? It's Red Dead Redemption 1. This game is 40 years old. It should run at 1,000 frames per second. They're going to support DLSS and FSR3 frame generation. You know, a lot of the modern bells and whistles that you would expect out of a PC game. And it will include the Undead thing. Undead Nightmare. Like any re-release of that does these days. They're putting it out around Halloween, and they're including the DLC with it. Congratulations to John Marston. Just congratulations to Sackboy. What's the opposite of congratulations? LittleBigPlanet 3 is going to be delisted from for sale this month. October 31st will be your final day to purchase Little Big Planet 3 and its DLC. This is according to an update they posted to social media. After 10 years of playing, creating, and sharing content in Little Big Planet 3, the game and our entire range of Little Big Planet DLC will be removed from the PlayStation Store on October 31st, 2024. Anyone who currently owns or purchases the game or any DLC before it is delisted will still be able to access their purchased games and content after its removal. This is a friendly heads up that if anyone in the community or any newcomers still wish to own a digital copy of Little Big Planet 3 or any of the DLC, this is your last chance to do so. Thank you for your continued support. So they already took the servers down for that, right? This is not a nothing. There's nothing in their message about servers being up or down, but I know. Yeah, that's right. It was like 6 months ago. They said, "Hey, the servers that have been offline for 6 months. We're just not going to bring them back." This was back in April that they announced that the servers would not be coming back online for the kind of online components and sharing and all the due to ongoing. They at the time they said due to ongoing technical issues which resulted in the Little Big Planet 3 servers for PS4 being taken offline temporarily in January 2024. The decision has been made to keep the servers offline indefinitely. All online services, including access to other players' creations, are no longer available. User-generated content stored locally will remain available. Any new UGC you create can be played on your PS4 but not shared. Offline features will remain playable. So yeah, they shut that down a while ago. Or someone shut it down for them about a year ago, and then they just went, all right, okay, I guess we're done. I am guessing that this is because of some kind of music licensing, right? I mean, this is always, like games don't get delisted. Games only get delisted for a small handful of reasons. It's, because they don't work anymore and they're not going to be updated to work. Or the company that owns the rights to it has gone under, and thus there is no one left to pay when a game is sold. And so, this happened with some of the THQ stuff where some of it just kind of went away. A lot of that DLC, I'm sure, for Little Big Planet is probably based on other people's property, as Tretch would say, as Vinrock would say. And so I'm sure that the IP rights on that stuff have probably lapsed or are coming up on lapsing or something to that effect, as well as whatever OK Go songs are on the soundtrack, I'm sure. What songs are on the Little Big Planet 3 soundtrack? We've received a notification. There's a Skinny Puppy song on the Little Big Planet 3 soundtrack. Okay. Keith Kaniff? Is that Ken Kaniff's brother? Sack boy. I got a sack for you, boy. Oh, fuck yeah. And so, yes, that is the end of Little Big Planet 3 being sold. But if you own it already and you have the rest of this month to buy it if you would like to buy it, I suppose. And then you can continue to play it locally. Little Big Planet Little Big Planet, for something that seemed like such a big deal when it was a current and new thing, I feel like few things have been cast aside and thrown into the trash, and not on purpose. I don't want to, few things have been thrown the fuck away quite as weirdly as the Little Big Planet franchise was. Like people enjoyed it. Like even if the platforming could have, like even if the jumping was better and wasn't all fucking weird, Little Big Planet was always a really cool thing. I think they hit diminishing returns by the time 3 even came out. 2 was cool. 3 was cool. It was cool that the things that they came up with that people could make and do in it were always really neat. And it feels like Sackboy just had a lot of potential, as a mascot type of character and whatever else. There was just, I don't know. And then, when the servers got hacked and they weren't initially responding quickly to fix it, and that last Sackboy game for PS5 was just like, here's a kind of whatever platformer for you, without any of the things that make a LittleBigPlanet game a LittleBigPlanet game. Yeah, I mean, what do you just like, yay, Mod Nation racers? Like, where's my Mod Nation at? Where are my Mod Nation racers? Throw your M's up in the air for your M's up in the air for the Mod Nation. No one is doing that. I don't know. LittleBigPlanet always seemed like a big deal, and it fizzled out. So, like, to now just like this delisting for LittleBigPlanet 3, and I guess that's that. It just doesn't feel right in some way. I don't. It feels bad. Obviously, Media Molecule went on to make Dreams, and the Dreams situation is a different story. It's in some ways it's the same story, I guess, as the LittleBigPlanet story, but it's slightly different. Yeah, I don't. I don't think they go and make a LittleBigPlanet 4, like on the heels of Dreams, kind of doing what it did and never really taking off quite as large as it always seemed like it could. I don't think you go back and make a LittleBigPlanet 4 at this point, right? That's not a thing. Yeah, well, yeah, I guess yes. They at some point, yes. Dynamob in the chat says Sumo Digital made 3. Yes, Sumo was involved at some point with that franchise as well. Sumo, I think, just laid off some folks today or yesterday. So yeah, it just feels like a very underwhelming finish to LittleBigPlanet, I guess. I don't know. LittleBigPlanet always seemed like something that deserved better, but maybe it didn't. Maybe it didn't. Maybe we had our time with it. It was a really inventive and innovative thing that they made, and it was really fun to go and see all of that stuff. But Dreams was very ambitious to a new, like on an entirely different scale than LittleBigPlanet was, and the tools were pretty neat for what they were, but also it was going to be more difficult to make big cool things in Dreams than it probably was even in LittleBigPlanet, and so you're relying on a fraction of people who would even be interested in making that sort of thing at this point. And I don't know. It's sad. I don't think Media Molecule has made a lot of great stuff, and I feel like that they just got chewed up and spit out or something. I don't like that studio feels like it deserved better, and a lot of people complained about the marketing behind Dreams at launch, but at the end of the day, I don't know that would have, like, they were just making such a fucking specific thing, and Sony was never aligned to truly support that thing, and the thing they made was never quite right in terms of how accessible it was to people who were not already engrossed in that ecosystem. They never said, hey, we're going to let people play the best of Dreams. If you're a PlayStation Plus member, you get to download all of these Dreams experiences for free. Like something that would just get it in front of more people on the player end of things. Because if no one's playing it, why are you making it? And if you're not making it, then who's there to play? Like this big dumb chicken and egg thing they ran into, where like a lot of people made a lot of cool stuff. I saw an Abe Lincoln head once that was very nice in Dreams. But yeah, I don't know. It just LittleBigPlanet also, I think, ran into I don't know what Little Big Planet needed more of. More of everything, I guess. But yeah. That's it for the news. Yeah, it's a weird it's a weird batch of stories this week, I guess. I don't know. Why don't we get into some emails now? Podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send your podcast emails to that address if you want me to read them for the podcast. It's simple. Destiny 2 Revenant Act 1 launches today, according to my email. All right, no, that's the wrong inbox. Yes, Inky Ghost says fuck Roblox. There's a research paper out that I need to take a longer look at that was trying to break down Roblox as a business. And the things that they were insinuating there was basically like, hey, Roblox has never been profitable, which is true. According to all the reporting, that thing has never turned a profit, but they keep reporting big numbers on the player and activity front to, continue to make it seem like a big growing thing. And so this was a pretty exhaustive breakdown, or at least on a surface level. I did not read the whole thing yet. But what they were basically getting at was like, hey, also, like, all these numbers they're reporting are fake because routinely players go and create dozens of accounts to pump up their own individual numbers for the things that they're creating. And that a lot of the so-called active user base is just people making new accounts and alternate accounts and whatever else. And that the whole thing is kind of built on a house of cards. I can't really speak to that one way or the other, but also Roblox has never been profitable, and it seems like something that, we're starting to see. It's not the first time I've said it, but we're starting to see more of the stories that I said we would probably start to see before too long about, like, boy, this seems a lot like child labor. Boy, it sure seems like children are being exploited here. Oh, it sure seems like you're creating an environment where children can be groomed. And wired bus tickets and all this other sick stuff that people want to do. Like, Roblox as a platform sure seems like it's, oh boy, yeah. And the moderation aspect of it and the lackluster moderation of it is starting to get a little bit more attention. And yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see if the Roblox thing actually does explode. It seems like there's a lot there. Like, if you really start digging into things that are happening on that platform, because it's so large and, like, it's hard to moderate large platforms, but also I think if you're making a platform that is largely going to be focused on children and children making and playing games, I think that you are making a thing that is going to attract a certain unsavory element alongside those kids. And it is your duty, as a company, to police that stuff and make sure that it is a safe place for children, or else it probably shouldn't exist at all, right? If you can't clean that stuff up, if you can't keep it safe, you shouldn't be allowed to have that platform. I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's Roblox is fascinating and potentially dangerous, I guess, right? I don't know. Someone made Tekken inside of Roblox, and I played that a little bit, and I was like, that's cool. Someone should make Roadblock in Roblox. G.I. Joe's own Roadblock. Let me play as him in my Roblox experiences. How much do I need to pay? Brian in the UK writes in and says, after watching your video on the Mortal Kombat 1 DLC where you talked about how good Aftermath was, I spotted that Aftermath was on sale, so I decided to pick it up. It's been a while since I played through 11, so I decided to replay that story. Can I just say that Ronda Rousey fucking sucked? If they had cast a tree in her place, the acting would have been less wooden. My question to you is, has there been a worse casting choice in a game than this? Yeah, it's Megan Fox as Nitara in Mortal Kombat 1. She may actually be worse in some ways than Ronda Rousey was in 11. Robbie from Akron writes in, wondering if single-player games are safer now. In the recent past, and honestly, even in the present, sometimes we heard that single-player games were dead or dying, and that multiplayer games were the way of the future. However, with the necessary server and upkeep management costs associated with running multiplayer, and the momentum issue of needing an active player base to even have a playable video game, is this sentiment shifting? With Conquered dying immediately and X-Defiant putting out worrying messaging, it seems like the risk-reward calculation for multiplayer is swiftly changing. What the hell is happening in this industry? Have we looped around to the point where single-player games are coming back as the safer bet? No, they're different bets. I don't know that one is necessarily safer than the other. Remember all the stories about Spider-Man 2 and how much money that cost to make, and all of that. Now envision a scenario where, like, hey, what's the reward for making an amazing single-player game? Like, sure, you'll turn a profit, but at the end of the day, you're going to sell a $70 thing. Maybe you're going to do a DLC for it or whatever. And let's say that the maximum possible spend on your game, let's call it $100. You do a $70 game, $30 season pass, $30 DLC, two $15 DLCs, whatever, however you break it down. That means the maximum that a player can spend on your game is $100. Now, I know you at home are sitting there thinking, like, that's a fucking fuckload of money. And I agree with you. That is a fuckload of money to spend on a single video game. But think about the maximum total spend you could get out of a player for a game. Let's say, you've got a game that runs for 5 years. And as a successful going concern or whatever, that you're, giving it away for free, or you're selling season passes for $15 a piece, battle passes, whatever, cosmetics for $5, $10, $15, and you're kind of just hitting people here and there over the course of 5 years. You might get more than $100 out of the average player over the course of that time. Because you'll have some players that give you $0 or the bare minimum if you're not free to play. Let's say, but for our made up example, let's say the game's free to play. You'll have a lot of players that give you $0, but also they will be the engine that drives the thing and gets other people to play it. And you might have someone else come in who spends $300. You might have someone who spends $1,000. And so that's why these risks get taken. When people ask, why do people keep making all these live service games? Why do people keep making games like this that are going to have all these updates and all these microtransactions? It's because if they can pull it off, it will be very lucrative for them. If they can figure out how to monetize well and make things that people want, and they stand to make a lot more than $100 per person or whatever, per paying customer. And so you have studios that are willing to take that gamble and willing to shoot for the stars on that stuff, because if they really hit it right, they really hit it big time, then man, that might be 10 years of money, life-changing money for people at the studio, life-changing money for people at the top of that food chain. While the rest of the people get laid off because it's still video games. And so I think that's why that happens. Of course, both things can get saturated. And in some ways, that's the problem we run into now. How many games can you play at a given time? Especially a game that is like, hey, don't forget to do your dailies and don't forget your weeklies and your seasonal quests. And are you going to buy the upgraded version of the battle pass because you'll accelerate through it more quickly, which is handy because you're playing 3 other games like this. And well, I don't know, you got friends in each of them. And so there's social pressure to try to keep up. And sometimes you want to stunt out and surprise your friends. And you bought the $50 skin so you could look at how shiny it is. Your friends are going to think you're a lunatic, but it'll be funny. And if isn't that why we're here, to pop our friends with stupid purchases? Isn't that what we do? Like, look at these dumb shoes I bought. Look at this limited edition shirt I bought. Isn't that what we're here to do? As isn't that for humans? Isn't that what, and so yeah, I obviously the weirdest thing, and it's kind of someone. We've had people write in talking about the PlayStation 6, because in the wake of the PlayStation 5 Pro and some of this very early talk about the PS6 and a next generation of console hardware. And someone wrote in and said, man, what's it going to be like when the PlayStation 6 comes out and people use it to just play, Fortnite and Roblox and whatever that year's Call of Duty is, and or Warzone, the free-to-play variant of Call of Duty, and it's the same 5 games all over again. And yeah, man, right? It's spooky to think about, because you do have these breakout hits, and games come along and poke through for a while, and they aren't all going to be live service games, and indie games blow up and do really well. And it's not to say that everyone is just playing the same 4 games, but assuming GTA 6 does not flop and destroy that entire business, what's it going to be? Is it going to be another 10 years of people playing Fortnite and GTA 6 and Roblox and Minecraft? And because that's go look at Circana's engagement charts and look at the top games on that list and go, oh shit, this many years later, it's still those games. That's probably not great. That's probably not great if you're trying to make games that are not those games. And so I think at the end of the day, that ends up presenting the opportunity for single player games. If you think about it, the opportunity for single player games becomes, hey, you're already playing 3 games like that. Here's a game that's only going to take you 30 hours, and then you can go do something else. So when you're between seasons of the game you're playing, or you're waiting for the next World of Warcraft expansion, why not play Spider-Man 3 or Wolverine or, whatever. Hellblade 3, like the opportunity for single player games almost becomes like a, hey, in between the other things you're doing for your quote unquote day job, your day job of leveling up these characters in these fucking shooters or whatever. How about you also check out this game where you're a sad man with a beard strangling people? And then, by the time you're done with that, the new battle pass will be out and you can go right back to that. And yeah, everybody wins, right? So like it in some ways, the opportunities for single player games are changing, or the windows for single player games start to change when you're trying to fit them in to that landscape. There was a study that I've seen quoted, and people wrote a lot of headlines because the headline was like 53% of players prefer single player games, I think was the stat that was coming out of it. But it had this demographic breakdown, and it was like it was a swath of people from age 16 to like in their 70s. And the older you skew, the more people are interested in single player games as opposed to multiplayer games. Whereas like the 16 to 24 demographic are like, no, we prefer multiplayer games, social games, whatever. And then you get to a point in the middle where it's kind of even, and then it starts to tilt heavy in the single player direction. I look at that as like that. Yes, single player games, they're dying. I don't, like people don't age out of multiplayer games. I mean, competitively, maybe they do. But as we have more and more experiences that are social in nature, as opposed to purely esports, purely competitive, whatever, like Roblox is, a social space as much as anything else. Minecraft is a social space as much as anything else. Like, I don't think that that's going to suddenly change, that people are going to go like, all right, I'm done with that, and now give me the games I can play alone. And so I don't know that's not a statistic that you look at and go like single player games are alive and well. You look at it as like the only people playing single player games, preferring single player games, are the people that are going to, potentially age out completely. And that's probably not good either. So yeah, I don't know. It was a very, like, the headlines generated from that study just seemed like wrong to me, basically. Levi writes in, as it's this month, it's Levi. This year it's Levi, actually. The frequency has slowed way down. But every so often, someone's going to write in with an email about SOCOM. And Levi, this time it's you. Loved SOCOM growing up. It was my first real multiplayer shooter I dove into. It's now been gone for 13 years. Do you see any reality where a revival could be successful? No. I guess I don't. I don't know. Like, what would you... Siege is, like what is a... You want a tactical competitive shooter. You want a slow-paced, movement-based shooter where voice chat is valued, I guess, as a part of it. So I think that there's room for that style of game. There's room for slower, more tactical video games. We see some of that with the extraction shooters that, the stakes get so high that you don't want to just run through it like it was fucking Call of Duty. And so you do have these slower paced shooters. Specifically the things... SOCOM was a time and a place thing. SOCOM was a multiplayer shooter on a console that didn't have those. Because most people never even owned the modem to begin with. And so... it was an amazing novelty at the time. It benefited from standing alone, really, on that platform, on consoles in a general sense, even, you could say, much in the same way that Phantasy Star Online did on the Dreamcast, where, hey, if you were only playing console games, you've never played a game anything like this ever before. And so, of course, it's going to be the biggest thing in the world. I think so. I loved SOCOM 1 and 2, 3 less so. And everything past that, but SOCOM 1 and 2, that is a game that I would say certainly between SOCOM 1 and 2, I have almost definitely played those games for 1,000 hours or more. That was all I did until PlanetSide came out, weirdly enough. Me and my roommate playing SOCOM, him in his bedroom, me in mine, doors open, yelling "Qualaba" back and forth at each other like idiots. It was great. It was great. It's fucking awesome. There was nothing like it. We were drinking a lot. We were just having a lot of fun playing fucking SOCOM 1 and 2. And then PlanetSide came out and I started playing PlanetSide and he saw me playing PlanetSide and he said, "This looks cool." And I got him a key for PlanetSide. And so we both started playing PlanetSide kind of obsessively. And that was, I guess, post SOCOM 2, but yeah, man, SOCOM 1 and 2, amazing video games. Amazing. The campaigns were really neat too, because you could use the voice headset to kind of order your guys around. And that didn't always work as well as you wanted it to, but it felt like the future at the time, and it was really neat. And, people have tried to make new ones, whether it's your H Hours or some of these other, SOCOM likes that have come along, and that's cool. But if anything, I think when you play them, it just kind of exposes like, yeah, gaming has kind of moved on a little bit. And I don't know that there's a place for SOCOM anymore. Because, again, straight up, because gaming has moved on, because multiplayer shooters have become completely ubiquitous, and so there's nothing novel about them. There were things about SOCOM 1 and 2 that were not awesome, but what other choice did you have? Unless you were playing shooters on a PC, in which case you had all the choices in the world. But yeah, they did awesome work on those games. Those feel like landmark moments. And Sony PR never really quite treated them like they were the big deal that they were. It was always like this second tier, like, oh yeah, we're also doing this. It was like, here's the big Sony first party stuff. And then down here in the other room around the corner, here's SOCOM and I don't know, 989 Sports is set up doing some stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. And so, like even from a first party kind of, I'm sure like from a marketing spend perspective, like it was never like the biggest game in the world or whatever. But yeah, man, those first couple of SOCOM games were amazing. And then, like I said, everything kind of normalized and first person shooters and just online shooters were kind of everywhere all of a sudden. And there was just a lot of other stuff out there. Like SOCOM 3 was still good, but like the PSP ones I never really got into. I tried to, but I think I just moved on to, just more and different types of games. And then they did that one on the PS3 and it was just like, oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's hard to imagine room for SOCOM in this day and age. It's not SOCOM's fault per se. It's just that, I think gaming and the types of players that are out there have moved on. Or if you were going to do it, you would end up doing something completely different and it would just be SOCOM in name only. To where you'd be like, I don't, here's the new SOCOM game. It's an extraction shooter. You and your 3 guys got to work together to get some stuff and leave. Like it would just be a different thing. And not to say that would automatically be bad, but I don't think that you would make a SOCOM game that would be anything like the old SOCOM games. John from Stamford, Connecticut writes in, the home of wrestling. No. What do you think Valve's plans are for 2025? Presumably they're well underway on a second generation Steam Deck. So my question is, do they want to try to time it in tandem with the Switch 2 launch when there will be maximum eyeballs on the handheld gaming space in general? Or is the Switch 2 such a juggernaut that they want to give it a wide berth before bringing out their next generation hardware? I think Valve will do... Okay, well, I don't think that a proper full-on sequel to the Steam Deck, a successor to the Steam Deck, I don't think that will be ready in 2025. I just don't know that we've advanced far enough. I don't know if what they would put out in 2025 would feel like new enough or more powerful enough to warrant them doing it in 2025. I think it'll be a little bit more time still. And so, yeah, I disagree that that thing would be ready for 2025. Just from a specs standpoint, I just don't think we'll get there. Because a lot of things have to line up from a price and availability standpoint and a size and thermals and blah, blah, the performance has to increase, but the price can't increase too much or else it's too expensive for people. And as the performance increases, it gets hotter. So can they thermally cool it in a thing this size? And, like the limitations of that market are many, I guess I would say. And so I don't think they give a shit what Nintendo is doing in terms of like, well, we can't launch a Steam Deck if the Switch 2 is coming out. Like it's just not the same thing. And I think even the Switch 2, well, hey, do you think the Switch 2 is going to be as powerful as the current Steam Deck? You would think so. Right? You'd like to think like, oh, well, it'll be up there, but actually probably not. It'll be in the ballpark, right? But they'll want it to be smaller, and Nintendo doesn't care about that. Nintendo's not setting out to beat the Steam Deck. Nintendo is going to look at the Steam Deck and go, huh. The only reason Nintendo cares about the Steam Deck now, which at some point, but when it was before it was out and all the other stuff, I'm sure that there was some like, wait a minute, what are they doing over there? What's going on? And then they found out more about it and went like, okay, I don't think this is something we need to treat as hostile just yet. Right up until the point that it started running Switch games. And well, Nintendo can't have that. That makes them look bad. And so, you know, obviously they've done what they've done. They've shut down the other major Nintendo Switch emulator project out there without a direct lawsuit this time, maybe just a threat of one. And so I think if anything, that is the thing that Nintendo would look at when it comes to the Steam Deck. Is the last thing they want is like, hey, here's a device that ostensibly looks similar to our thing and runs our games better than our thing does. That probably, if nothing else, pisses them off. And so, yeah, you know, I don't think Valve is looking at the Switch and going like, oh, what are we going to do? You know, and vice versa. I don't think there's anything there that is like so directly hostile that that has to be considered. And so Valve's plans for 2025, like they'll publicly release Deadlock, probably. Right? I mean, that'll probably at some point next year become available to anyone who wants to play it. I mean, it already kind of is. But it will not be an invite-only thing the way it is now. It'll just be like, here you go. And that'll probably be, I mean, you know, hey, we'll see a lot more, you know, we'll see more Counter-Strike 2 updates. Right? Maybe they'll patch TF2 one or two more times in 2025. I don't know. You know, there's maybe we'll hear more about what this supposed VR headset that they are working on will be. I guess. Presumably they're going to stay in that market and not just let Facebook have it all, I guess. Right? But I don't think we'll see a follow-up to the Steam Deck. I think, you know, we'll see more iterations from these kind of also ran these other devices that are out there, your ROG Allies and there's like 2 or 3 different ones now, these other units. Like, you know, you'll maybe see some better advancements on the Windows side to make Windows a little friendlier to run on handheld devices. They did roll out that compact mode for the Xbox app, which I looked at. I mean, granted, I looked at it on a desktop, but I was just looking at it and going like, I don't see what the value is here. This doesn't seem like it actually makes any of this actually easier to use. At least easier enough to feel like, oh, this is a big deal. But they'll probably put out more hardware. You know, there'll be new entries into the space as more hardware manufacturers say, we're going to make one of these Steam Deck style things too. And we'll probably see some light advancements along those lines. But yeah, I don't think we'll see much out of Valve on that front. Unless it's like another half step update or another like quick kind of like, hey, we're going to make them in different color. Like, here's a blue one. You know, we've decided to launch these things in 5 different colors. If you want something like that, but it's the same innards. You know, it's still an OLED. It's still this. It's still that. But I don't think we see a true successor, a true next generation Steam Deck, whatever that even means. In 2025, I don't see it. Also, do we need it? Like, yes and no. Like, you definitely see a handful of games that don't run great on a Steam Deck. The last Descendant, or what? Sorry, the first Descendant has the no sign on it on a Steam Deck. It's like, no, this is not Steam Deck supported. And it's not because of any anti-cheat or anything like that. It's because like they can't get it to run well enough. Like you can still run it and it still runs and you can still play it. It just runs like shit. And there's nothing in the settings you can do to make it run right. And so, yeah, sure. Maybe you end up with a situation where a more powerful one of those will be able to run hot games like that. But the number of games that don't run well on a Steam Deck and can't be made to run well on a Steam Deck is actually relatively low. So unless next year, unless we see developers really chasing the high end and really abandoning the low end, which I don't really see happening until we've got new console hardware out proper. I don't know that PC games are going to push that far forward anytime soon. Obviously, NVIDIA will launch the 50 series cards at some point, and there'll be a 5090 out there. But like, that doesn't mean they're going to abandon whatever the low end generations are now, or the game developers are going to abandon the low end, because there are a lot of people out there that have low end machines. And you want to sell games to them too. So, and the Steam Deck gives you another reason to have the ability to run on a lower spec device. And so, I don't know, maybe we see Microsoft get in on the act. I don't think that would be a 2025 thing, but if they were to say, hey, yeah, we didn't put out like a weird pro console. Instead, we put out a handheld that runs games about as well as a Series S does, or maybe a little bit better. Maybe that would be cool. I don't know. I'd rather that be a Windows machine than an Xbox, but I don't know. Randy from Maine writes in and asks, does managing people suck shit? I'm looking for a little inside baseball chat here, and I don't know how much you want to say, blah, blah, blah. How much of your time with the various outlets and publications in your career would you say has been spent working on administrative bullshit and making sure your team is meeting their KPIs or whatever? As a fellow guy in his 40s, I've resisted being a manager for my entire career because I'm the guy who wants to do the job instead of the guy who wants to make sure other people are. Did you seek out, resist, or refuse these positions in your career? And based on those experiences, are you looking for a return to management? Or are you trying to avoid management as much as you can? So, managing people is a serious thing. Their career can be in your hands to a certain degree, even if your hands are just as tied as theirs are. When it comes to any kind of career advancement for anyone on your team, or raises or whatever, like, you if there's no leeway up top, then you're just kind of left spinning plates. I had a guy once years ago that felt like he was the best contributor to the team, and he was he was, they rated people 1 to 5 back then, and so you had to write your reviews and rank them from 1 to 5. And this guy got a 4, which was the highest ranking on the team, at least on my team at the time. But it wasn't a 5. And so instead of going like, hey, cool, all right, like he was like, well, why isn't it a 5? Like he got like really indignant about it in a way that I was not expecting. And it was just like, oh, okay, well, there's a lot of pushback, sometimes on a lot of decisions that are getting made around here, kind of like this conversation we're having right now, and had to kind of talk about that. And then, he didn't especially like that answer. And I think he went and complained to management and told them that I was sitting in my office and playing Tekken all day, which was not true, but resulted in some dumb shit after the fact. Managing people's weird, basically, because you don't really know. You don't always know what drives them. You learn your people, and you figure out what makes them tick and all this other stuff. And but like, just, you don't know what pressures they're facing at home or like what their needs are career, like if you know until you don't know, right? And you sort of sometimes you can't anticipate that, because like maybe someone on your team is like they're getting ready to have a kid and start a family and all this other stuff, and so their monetary needs are going to change dramatically in the near future, and so they're going to be much more high strung when it comes to raises and money and all of this other stuff. I don't like that aspect of it. I don't necessarily mind it, but it's not my preference. Also, I don't want to just do that. And so there were a couple of opportunities over the years of like where I could have taken on more management responsibility. There was a situation where like, so when John Davison left GameSpot, they brought someone over from the UK. His name was Ben. Good guy. He's not there anymore either. He's off doing something else. But they brought Ben over. And at one point, like the guy who was John Davison's boss was a guy named Simon, who's at Facebook now. Simon came to me to tell me like, hey, you were bringing this guy Ben over. You're going to love him. He's a good guy. And then he stopped for a second. He went, oh, hey, you didn't want that job, did you? Because we could talk about it. Because, I would have been potentially someone who would have been in line for some kind of promotion on that front. But by the time he had come to me, the decision was already like largely made, I think. But he's just like after the fact, like, oh, wait a minute. Are you going to be super mad that I'm telling you? And he's like, did you want that? And I'm like, no. Okay, good. I didn't think you did. And I'm like, yeah, I fucking don't, dude. I fucking do not. I don't want to be, I like to do this. I like to make the stuff. And I don't want to just manage the people that make the stuff. I don't want to have to come to them and be like, hey, I think your idea is bad and I think you should do it this way instead. And when they say, but my idea is good, then I have to be the guy who puts my foot down and be like, actually, your idea is fucking bad and we're going to do it this way. So like creatively, I don't think I've ever laid anything down like that on anyone ever. Though I can think of a few times where I maybe should have. I have not. But like, I like making stuff. And I have worked for someone, I have reported to someone in the past who took the management position, but then also kept trying to make stuff. And the end result was this, and this was something that I was seeing off to the side. It was like adjacent to me. It was not happening to me directly, but all the other people that reported to him fucking hated it. Because they were like, shit, dude, like you're in this management position. Go fucking manage. Like I'm supposed to be this person who was supposed to be the editor in chief or whatever was like basically getting stepped on all day long by this other person who kept trying to make stuff, who kept trying like, oh, let me do this, and wanted to still be in things. And I think from a morale perspective, that ended up being a real killer for parts of that team. That felt like they were not able to manage, that they had no say over what the team was doing because this guy was still managing processes that he should have stepped out of and said, okay, that's your job now. I'm delegated. Like you have been delegated all of this. And so you should be doing this. I'm going to go here and stare at numbers all day. I get it though. I don't want to stare at numbers all day. But what I did is I never pursued that position because I didn't want that fucking job. So different people are going to be wired differently in terms of what they want to do. There were times where I was very open to taking a more management focused position because I thought it would be good for my team. Like if we were maybe on the bubble and it was like, why does this thing even exist anymore? We already have 3 other video game sites. There was an aspect that was like, well, shit, if I am also in charge of the other video game website, then maybe that will afford us opportunities for growth and raises and all this other stuff that we're not getting. That ended up not coming to pass, but it was like something I was at least like open to pursuing because it seemed like it could have been good for the people that reported to me. but it ended up not happening. So I don't know, like at some point, and you ask, like, am I looking to return to management in my new enterprise? If I hired people, I would manage them, right? I mean, they would have to, like, I'm not going to grow a 30-person organization and have someone reporting to me who then everyone else reports to them. Like maybe that's a good separation if I'm going to remain the, like, guy whose name is on the door or whatever. Like, yeah, at some point you can't also manage everybody. I think a lot of these YouTube operations that grow run into a lot of bad management because you've got a lot of guys who started alone making videos, and then suddenly they brought on one person and two people, and suddenly it's like 30 people reporting to Mr. Beast, and it turns like, whoops, Mr. Beast is maybe not a fucking good guy or not a fucking good manager. And so at some point they hire a bunch of people, but if those people all still are getting the toxic management style of a Mr. Beast, which apparently he's not a wonderful person to fucking work for, then you still end up in kind of a shit show. So I don't know. It's a part of management. There's the look. Management is two things. There's the managing of the product and managing of the output. That's a part I have zero problem with. I'm totally fine with that. Like leading the direction of a thing, and here's what we're going to do, and more importantly, here's what we're going to fucking not do. That is stuff I care about. Managing people's careers and all that other stuff, that is stuff I care about to a degree where I know that it's not something I love doing. It's not something I am necessarily passionate about. I mean, whatever. You could write a book about fucking having people that are ostensibly friends with each other who then suddenly become direct reports, and how fucking awkward that gets. At times, it's not a good scenario, and it can't be by definition, And so I don't know. It's an awkward thing all around in that particular thing, but yeah, I don't know. Like I would not want to immediately go manage a bunch of people and then do that full time. That is not something I'm looking to do. Maybe that's dumb of me, but because that's where all the opportunities were at that point. Like I had ascended to a point in the organization that if I was going to go any higher and make any more money, that I was going to basically have a completely different job. But that's not why they hired me. They hired me to be this idiot. So it would be bad for them for me to disappear behind the scenes as well, to be totally honest. It's a weird thing, especially in this specific line of work where it is this personality driven thing. It's not always easy to say like, oh, hey, here's this personality person that's now going to not do that and just stare at numbers all day. Like that's weird too, because you're like, well, wait, actually a lot of the value we get out of this person is because they're in front of the camera. If they're going to disappear behind the camera and only produce, or if they're going to only manage, or if they're going to only do this, then suddenly we're only getting half of that person's output. Is that what we want? Are we okay with that? Are they going to be good enough at that to warrant us being able to hire a replacement for the in front of the camera position? Like it all kind of sucks. The personality driven business thing is tricky to navigate. Very tricky. It's why they often say it's a young man's game, because, people in the 20s, they quit, they go do something else, they go whatever, but like at some point the things change a little bit. Let's see. I'll do a couple more emails here. Eric writes in and says, Astro, but Nintendo. If Nintendo does a hardware and software nostalgia platformer like Astrobot, how far back should it go in the company's history? Should you start by collecting playing cards? So, sure, yes. I mean, yes, you would absolutely do Hanafuda cards. You would do the love tester. You would do the fucking bat thing. But here's the thing. Between Smash Brothers and WarioWare, they've already made their nostalgia games. The assist trophies in Smash, all the stuff that's all over Smash, like they've already done it. All the assist trophies in Smash all the trophies in Smash are just the fucking Astrobot bots. They just don't animate the same way, or rather, at all. And then in WarioWare, they've made new versions of old things, and they've made micro games based on the Ultra Hand and whatever else. But like Nintendo already has their franchises and their games that include portions that are very deliberately nostalgia steeped, and that's Smash and WarioWare. So yeah, I don't think they would make a platformer that does that, because they don't need to. They're already doing it in multiple ways. Man, Daddy Warbucks with the question of the week here. What's the last porn game you played? Has it been a good long while? Are you freaking daily? I streamed Monster Girl Island Prologue over Discord to some buddies and my now wife years ago, and it was shockingly good. Too bad the full game's in development hell. Well, I honestly don't know. I will tell you though, Steam is constantly recommending porn to me. When I go to the homepage of Steam and scroll down and say like, what are the hot new releases? There's always at least one game on there that is porn. And occasionally I will check one out because I'm just curious, go like, what the fuck even is this stuff? Like, I'm always looking for games that look and feel like quote unquote, that are not visual novels. If you're telling me you're making like a third-person action RPG and that there's also like, and that you play as a naked lady the entire time, which I think is the last one I played. I can't remember the name of it, but it was fucking terrible. Let's see here. I'm looking at new and trending. I'm not seeing any pornography here. Let's look at top sellers. Throne and Liberty, is that porn? Sounds like it. No, maybe not. Shady Knight? Is that? No. Vikings. Here's one. Vikings, sex and blood. That's in the popular upcoming list for me on the Steam front page right now. A lot of it is terrible, and it feels like a lot of the business around adult games on Steam is really nasty as well, because you have these situations where games are launching on Steam and sometimes they launch in early access, or they launch in like a reduced capacity even though they're being sold on Steam, and then on top of that they'll say, hey, if you want the full version of this game, you need to back our Patreon. And so they're like distributing patches for the Steam version, or they're distributing a newer game, whether that's on Patreon or itch or wherever, and so it's almost this weird thing of like, okay, so the Steam version of this is like a scam then? You're just doing it for visibility? I don't like, I'm not sure exactly what the play is there, but it seems like a very weird business. And I don't know if that's because Steam has very specific regulations around what they allow or not, but it seems like I've seen stuff on Steam that seems pretty open. But that VR thing that was on Steam, I had to download a patch for that. But that was a Japanese game, and that's a whole separate set of regulations. I think a lot of this stuff is bad, and I think it would be interesting. I'm not going to do it, but I think it would be interesting for someone to become a person who is like really honestly trying to look at these products and review these products and say, here's what they are, and here's if they're any good or not, if there's any real craft to these, or if they're now, is a lot of it just being like farted out by AI along the way, or whatever. I think that there's got to be room for like a well-made adult game, a well-made sex video game, I guess. I don't know. Like it just seems like there should be. It seems like that should exist, but the budgets or the developers are focused more on making sure that the fucking looks good, and I mean, also, I don't think the fucking has ever looked good in anything like this, but I'm not well steeped in the genre. Maybe there's something out there that I'm just not aware of, but I feel like when I do take the plunge and be like, what the fuck is this thing? It's always terrible. It's never like, it ain't sexy like it should be, Jack. That's for sure. And so you just look at it and go like, this is fucking god awful. You've made these models hump. Congratulations. Where's the art? Nothing hot about it either. I mean, I don't want to yuck anybody's yum, but I feel like if you're whacking off to this stuff, you're pretty fucking far down the fucking. This is the internet, man. You could just find whatever, and maybe it's not interactive, but but also like erotic literature, right? I'm sure that there are visual novels that are probably quite well written in that space. I'm not especially interested in that either, but I'm sure that there's got to be, like, statistically, there's got to be some erotic visual novels that are probably well made. But it's just not. I don't know, man. I try to check that stuff out every so often just to like keep abreast, if you will, of what is happening in that space. But I have a really scattershot kind of spray and pray approach to all of it that I just kind of look at and go like, all right. And I feel like most of the time I just find something that sucks. So I don't really know. It's a lot of trash. A lot of trash out there. Let's see. Alexander writes in with what he calls a stupid conspiracy. Hey there, I recently purchased Star Wars Outlaws from QVC with a $30 discount. Then I heard the mountain of hate people gave the game, so I waited to play it. Now QVC has sent me a "How was Star Wars Outlaws? Out of 5" email. Do you think they somehow knew people wouldn't like the game and that's why they discounted it? Probably not. I mean, that's probably an opportunity to where, like, oh, if you get on QVC, then maybe you're going to reach more people, but to reach them on QVC, you have to do it at a discount. And so QVC does deals like that all the time. It's part of the it's part of how you get a product onto QVC in the first place sometimes. So yeah, and getting an email that says, "Hey, what did you think about it?" Is a pretty standard, like, "Hey, review the product you just bought. Like, come back to our website and maybe buy something else while you're here." Like, that's a pretty standard tactic for sure. He ends his email saying, "Just curious, I smoke too much and think about stupid things." Yeah. No, Alexander, I don't think there's any real conspiracy. I don't think they knew that the game was bad and that they need to sell it at a discount or whatever. No, it's like QVC will sometimes do some weird deals on stuff. Yeah, someone in chat says it's, that they'll have decent coupons for new customers. So, they're doing loss leaders to get you to sign up for a QVC account because they're hoping you'll buy some fucking T-foul. They're hoping that you're going to look at Tova and be like, we got to get some Tova shit in here. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I bought Star Wars Outlaws and also some of Tova's perfume for you. Tova was on. She said that Star Wars Outlaws was dope. And I said, well, shit, man. If Tova thinks it's good, I'm going to get it. We love Tova. Let's get some lock and locks, man. We're going to keep this food so fucking sealed up in these containers, dog. I bought a pet vacuum from QVC 5 years ago or something, and It was like for litter. You put it near a cat's litter box, and you can sweep it into. It's like a freestanding box that basically, when you sweep anything near the bottom of it, it turns on a vacuum and sucks it up whatever you're sweeping at it. So basically, it's like a freestanding dustpan. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but when our first daughter was born, and she's breastfeeding, and so she would wake up every 2 hours, and so I would wake up with my wife, and we would sit out on the couch all night and we got to a point where we were just leaving QVC on that TV, not turning the TV off at night, and just going back into the bedroom, and then like we'd come out and QVC would be on, and we'd just be watching this bullshit, and you're just so sleep deprived and so out of it. You're just like, yeah, we need the litter box sucks, dude. I'm gonna get this fucking litter box thing. This is a good idea. It was not a good idea. It was not a good idea. Turns out. Oh, let's see if we can find maybe one or two more. A lot of emails full of misspellings this run here, like that feel like they were written on a phone by someone who was running away from a monster. Derek from Jersey writes this: I just picked up a Steam Deck and I just picked up a Steam Deck Ant Water setup emulation. I think he means and want to set up emulation with retro achievements on it. Would love some insight on what you used to do it. I use it. It's a script called EmuDeck that very handily installs a lot of emulation stuff onto a Steam Deck very easily. You could manually install RetroArch or something like that if you wanted to as well, but EmuDeck makes that easier. It also installs stuff like DuckStation and PCSX2, both of which have retro achievement support for PS1 and PS2 games. Dolphin has retro achievements support now as well. I would grab EmuDeck and install that and probably go that way with it to get that stuff installed on a Steam Deck. It's a weird question from JP from Massachusetts. What was the fucking ace that Ben Judd had up his sleeve regarding Bionic Commando? I'm guessing this is in regards to an interview that we did with Ben Judd at one point in the past about Bionic Commando. We interviewed Ben Judd in a bathroom in his hotel. It was probably the wife arm. It was probably that the arm was the wife. I'm guessing is what the fucking ace up his sleeve probably was. But also, if I remember that interview correctly, we were just fucking shooting the shit about nothing, and so it may very well be absolutely nothing. But yeah, I don't know. I have not seen that dude in a very long time. He was in an agency. I think he's still there. I think he was running like the Japanese arm of DDM or something like that. Last I looked, I don't know. I don't know where that dude is. I don't know where Ben Judd is. Don't come to me asking about Ben Judd. I don't know what the fuck Ben Judd is doing. Let's see. Brad from Grand Rapids writes in and says, I've been hit with a nostalgia wave lately regarding the old Project Gotham games from the original Xbox and Xbox 360. As much as I've enjoyed the Forza Horizon games, the last pair of entries have had entirely too much stuff to do, and it really starts to take away from the experience. Based on what I've heard about the new Test Drive game as well, and the most recent Crew 3, Motor Sport or whatever, right? Nobody seems to want to do a distilled arcade racer anymore. What would it take to get back to when things were truly good again? Yeah, I don't know what the conventional wisdom is around driving games anymore. I know for a long time, the only thing you would really hear is that people want real cars. They want real licensed cars, and that caused the stuff like Ridge Racer and Burnout and stuff to be less desirable because it did not have licensed cars, and so the Blur, for example, just some of the other stuff that was happening around unreal cars and crazy explosions and whatever else. That the conventional wisdom became that people want to buy games that have real licensed vehicles in them. I think that there is an aspect of open world driving games that can, not all, it doesn't always work this way, but I think it can appeal to a wider audience than people who just want a car game. Especially if you've got a lot of objectives in there that aren't just win a race. Project Gotham was, very focused, and if you didn't like that focus, you didn't like that game. Whereas a game like Forza Horizon does so many different things that a lot of different people can say, oh, well, maybe I don't like these, super long endurance races or whatever, but I do like this, and I do like this, and I do like this. And so I think the open world driving game in some ways becomes a little bit safer because it can help broaden the overall appeal of a game. But that focus, it has value as well. I was terrible at the Project Gotham games and Metropolis Street Racer and all of that. I was bad at earning kudos, which in a game like that is bad. You need to earn them kudos. You need to drive good and earn kudos. And I got to be okay at like PGR 3. So by the time they were done making that style of game, I finally like dialed it in a little bit. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm all right at this. But like MSR, I was fucking terrible at it. So yeah, I don't know. I think these days a lot of that stuff gets wrapped up in the larger question of just like, who cares? Do people care about cars the same way? What is the age? What is the demographic for people that will play a game with cars in it anyway? Do kids care about cars the same way they used to? I have to imagine the answer is no. But I can't say that for sure. But just like logically, it seems like people are overall just a little less interested in cars and car culture than maybe they were 20 years ago. So yeah, I don't know. What does it take to make like a wider range of driving games? I don't know. I want Ridge Racer back. That is the one that I always want. And Ridge Racer is so far removed from realism and anything resembling actual driving in terms of how its mechanics work and how everything else functions. Like Ridge Racer is the things in Ridge Racer don't even need to look like cars. They call them machines for a reason. Those things aren't cars. I don't know what they are. But they sure don't drive like cars. But yeah, I think that the open world format kind of just lends itself really well to a wider sense of appeal because you might not like to do long, demanding races. So I think that's why Forza Motorsport, especially this last one, but the last couple really, have just been bummers. Is because you have, these Forza Horizon games that are so open and just have so many different things for you to do all the time. And then you get to Forza Motorsport and it's like, I don't know, man, drive a car in a circle for a while. How many laps do you want to do on the Nürburgring? And to me, at this point, the answer is 0. I want something that's a little more free and fun and open and just lower stakes, man. Just like, let me just fucking drive around and fuck around. And like, yeah, I'll do a race here and there and I'll bang around with the AI and sure. But like, it doesn't, it's not going to be some big, long, weird thing. And, like Motorsport. I mean, especially because they, and I guess good on them in a weird way for picking a lane. But, Forza Motorsport just seems like it's trying so hard to be not Horizon. Especially with the online stuff where it was like, hey, this next online session doesn't start for another 12 minutes. So you can sit here and practice for a while. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to push a button to do a multiplayer race and then sit around for 12 minutes. Are you high? I've got a life to lead. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, it was just like so crazy that the game was that, you know? But maybe that appeals to someone. I just think that at the end of the day, like the person who is the customer for that probably wants something that goes even further than Forza does, and Forza's not far enough for them in the simulation direction. So I don't know. Gran Turismo, I think, you know, it helps that they don't make those as frequently as Forzas have come out. Like, there's something to be said for Gran Turismo feeling a little bit more rare. And weird. It's got all its crazy menus and all its jazz and everything. Like, there's a vibe to it. Either you like that or you don't. I've liked the vibe of the most recent Gran Turismo game, but I just don't care enough about driving in those types of races to stick with it. But man, Gran Turismo 7 in VR was cool. That was a cool experience. That was a really neat VR driving game. But everyone just says, like, what do they say? I mean, what is it? Everyone's like, go play Assetto Corsa or something instead. Like, you know, there's better options out there for people who want a somewhat more serious but racing focused game. They just announced a new Assetto Corsa that'll be out in January. Assetto Corsa Evo. Driving Simulation Evolved. Yeah, I don't know. With the launch of a new Kunos Simulazione proprietary high-performance photorealistic engine, VR and triple screen support have become first-class features when the new mathematical model meticulously simulates asphalt performance in different dynamic weather conditions that guarantees an authentic and realistic experience, which will redefine the standards that have made Assetto Corsa globally renowned. I'd be curious to see how that thing ends up faring when it finally comes out. And that's out mid-January, so that's kind of right around the corner. But yeah, I think it's just games are expensive to make, and as a result, I think you see a lot of games that are built in such a way as to appeal to as many people as possible. And I think that results in some experiences that are watered down compared to if you really focused on one aspect of this driving game and really nailed it, there would be an audience for it, but it might not be an audience large enough to make its money back, you know, to make a game profitable. But I think that's something that, you know, you could probably build an argument that is a major problem with video games these days, is that as a result of them becoming so expensive to develop at, you know, at the, let's call it the AAA scale, or, you know, whatever, the kind of major publisher game, that those games are getting so expensive to produce that they have to do everything they can to try to make sure that they're going to make their money back. And so they end up doing things like, hey, okay, this is going to have seasons and battle passes and all these other things we can use to make money on it, because we just spent hundreds of millions of dollars making this fucking thing, and we're not sure if people are going to play it, but hopefully we'll get them to spend a little more money on it, because holy shit, games are expensive. Or you have these other situations where, you know, maybe you are making a single player or a smaller in scope sort of thing that is not going to be a live service game, but you still have to look at it and go like, well, we need to try to make this game appeal to as many different people as possible. And so that's how you end up with games that, like, you know, where you start to ask the questions about like the difficulty of a game and how adjustable should it be, and should games have an easy mode and accessibility and all of this other stuff. And we've come so far in that direction to try to make games more accessible to more people, and that's been a good thing. But at the same time, I think you've got other games that, you know, that philosophically are being designed for a wider audience in ways that they're not making them as narrow focused as they used to. And so you end up with things that are a little bit more, I don't know, like shallow is the word. Like open world games that have like a zillion different things to do, but when you get to each one of those dots on the map, it's just a 5-minute dumb thing. And you're like, okay, yeah. All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, we got to race through these gates. Okay. Yeah, I guess we'll do that. Yay. Things that don't really add that much to the experience, but you gotta put as many things as possible in there because you've got to be able to say it's got over 200 activities. Look at the back of the box. Look at the number of activities here. Look at this map. You'll play this game for an hour. The value is off the charts. Whatever it ends up being. It's but that probably ends up, that can lead to some negative things as well, depending on the game, depending on how they focus it, depending on all that other stuff. So I think it makes sense why we see more open world games than not, because again, I think that that is probably perceived to be a little more desirable to a wider range of players and skill levels than if you just go and make a new Project Gotham game. If they may, I want more diversity in racing games. I would love to see a wider range of, I want to see a new Burnout. I want to see more futuristic car combat. I want to see a new Wipeout. I want to see like a wide variety of driving games out there. Again, I would love to see that. But at the same time, if you told me, hey, we're making a new Project Gotham, I'd be like, oh, okay. I was always bad at getting the kudos. Maybe I'll try it. I'll try it, I guess. Hey, it'll be on Game Pass, whatever. I'll try it. But I would not be jumping out of my seat to be like, I've got to run and go buy a new PGR, like the way some people would. So that right there is why you make that game that meets in the middle. You just go like, I don't know, man, drive around this open world and fucking break stuff. Use whatever car you want. I don't know, just have fun. Just have fun, whatever. And those games kind of lose their focus a little bit. That's going to be it for the show this week. I could ramble back and forth about that for another hour, but you get the idea. Yeah, I mean, if they put a new Geometry Wars into it, that'd be one thing. They should just make a new Geometry Wars. It's weird, it's weird that hasn't come up more often now that Microsoft is back in possession of the Geometry Wars license, the intellectual property of bright ass squares and triangles and shit. It's weird that we haven't had more conversations about Geometry Wars and what's happening with it and when is it coming back? Not if it's coming back. When will there be a new Geometry Wars? That's going to do it for today. Thanks everybody for listening to the podcast. Go leave a review of it somewhere on the iTunes, or go put a 5-star review if you think it deserves. We got whatever. Go on Spotify, whatever. Go do a thing. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And you can back the Patreon. Patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. Get bonus shows, additional content, ad-free versions of this podcast. All that shit, y'all. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll play some games. I don't know what though. Maybe that would be a good place to think about this Dragon Ball Sparking Zero story creator mode. Or maybe I'll just click dead stuff in Diablo 4 for a while. I don't know. Well, we'll do something. We'll do something with some video games. Perhaps on Wednesday. And then come Friday, we will rank 8-bit Nintendo Entertainment System games. Last week we played Metal Gear. If you want to watch Metal Gear get ranked, you can right now on YouTube. There was an interesting thing happened with the Metal Gear thing. Like sometimes I feel like I have a good understanding of people's like overall fervor for a game. And the science is the science, right? I mean, the science is what it is. It's immutable. It's scientific where these games end up on the list. But sometimes people will try to deny science, and they will try to say like, oh, that game got ranked too high, which is crazy. The number of people that said that Metal Gear was ranked way too high, I was not expecting that. If anything, I was expecting the opposite, because if I know anything about fans of Metal Gear, it's that they're out of their fucking minds. And you can count on them to be like, that's a top 5 video game. What the fuck is wrong with you? About any one of them all the time. So I was surprised to see anyone say that Metal Gear should be lower on the list or whatever, but I guess they're just MSX nerds at this point. Anyway, that's going to do it for the show this week. Come on back tomorrow for some more stuff, and Friday for even more. And then Tuesday we'll be here before you know it, and we'll have another episode of this, The Jeff Gerstmann Show. See you then.